3 minutes after 10. It's Thursday. I mentioned that to remind myself more than to remind you, because it feels a bit like Friday. I break up today just for a long weekend, and I suspect a lot of other people will be doing as well. Don't at me if you're not. I completely understand the difference between being off tomorrow and not being off tomorrow. But it means we're doing Mystery Hour, but also pushing forward to this week's, Hollywood-tastic, full disclosure. One of the most enjoyable interviews I've ever done with someone who doesn't do many interviews, certainly not hour-long, sit-down, relatively in-depth interviews. If you want to hear someone getting paid for having an absolutely joyous hour, then be sure to download this week's Full Disclosure with Hugh Laurie. I'll play a little clip of it later. On a more serious note, something a bit poignant occurred to me on the way downstairs just then. There's a story in the news today about the number of families opting for what we have to somewhat infelicitously call cut price funerals. And we first started talking about this not long after I lost my dad, which is a long time ago now, 12 years. I really miss him today, by the way. I get these newspaper articles keep popping up calling me a member of the new liberal elite that is secretly controlling the national conversation. Some no-marks written a book claiming that the country is not secretly run by, governments that have been Tory for 13 years or that the national conversation isn't influenced by newspapers owned by plutocrat billionaires, Rupert Murdoch, Viscount Rothermere, the Barclay family. No. The national conversation is secretly directed by me, Emily Maitlis, and Carol Vorderman. You may have missed this, but my dad would have loved that. My dad, who grew up, if you're at all familiar with the pub landscape of Leeds, you will choke upon your latte when I tell you the name of the pub that my dad grew up above. But he understood the class system in this country, like few others. He ended up on the Daily Telegraph, having grown up above the Market Tavern in Leeds, known affectionately and colloquially as the Madhouse. Actually, possibly not that affectionately. I thought some of the stories he told me about that were exaggerated until I started meeting people who actually drank that, and then I realised he was going easy on me. But he then, of course, sent me to public school. I mention it often on the programme because I appreciate the size of the gift that he gave me. It is, the best thing that you can do for a child as a parent is to give them the best possible education you can possibly access, and it's not fair. Let's not make any bones about that. He understood that as well. But the idea that one generation after he left school at 15, by dint of him understanding the class system and wanting the best for his boy, I'm now being anointed as a member of the new liberal elite that's secretly in control of the country. God. So I miss him today. But I can't even remember why I mentioned that. But the conversation that we will be having first this morning will be about the police. The cut price funerals I mentioned, didn't I? In the news, and when we first talked about this, I'd recently lost my dad, and we had some fun with it. I mean, the slightly hilarious, albeit bittersweet observation that the last place on earth that you're likely to haggle is in an undertaker's. Just think about it for a minute. And we took some astonishing calls from people who had done, which I just thought was delightful, and B, from people who highlighted the epic cost, often inexplicable cost, of a funeral. So getting onto a story possibly later, we're going to do funerals or Scott Benton, which I suppose is a political funeral, if there's any justice at all. And the reason I mention it being poignant as I made my way downstairs a moment ago was that it won't be funny anymore, will it? Because the cost of living crisis, coupled with the cost of a funeral, and of course the coronavirus aftermath, probably means that there are people for whom terrible things have happened as a consequence of the cost of living crisis plus the cost of funerals. And so I'm not sure if we do that subject quite what the best way to approach it would be. I don't think it would involve the kind of light-hearted, albeit morbid humour that we found last time we touched on it, because of the notion of actually not being able to afford it. So anyway, that's just a quick heads up. I'm going to begin with the police, and I'm going to begin with a question that is a bit odd, actually, and I don't know if anyone's going to be able to answer it. If no one can answer it, then I'll come up with a slightly different question. But when you read a headline Like this one. Scotland Yard is battling its biggest corruption crisis since the 1970s. Its new commissioner has warned. This follows new evidence of widespread bungling of sexual and domestic abuse claims against officers. Now, look, correlation is not causation, but given what we've discovered about the toxicity of attitudes among the actual officers, among the rank and file, and don't come it with your bad apple. That was close. I love alliteration so much. I come closest to swearing when I'm about to go for an alliteration. I don't know if you've noticed that. Don't come at it with your bad apple rhetoric. This is a cancer at the heart of the police force. And while some parts of the police force may not have been reached by the cancer, it is part of the body police. And now that we know what we know about attitudes among police officers, from the dismal extremes of murderers and rapists right through to the casual misogyny and racism displayed on all of these WhatsApp groups, it's hardly a mystery, is it? It's hardly a shock to the system that sexual and domestic abuse claims were not treated very seriously by police officers who were routinely making sexual and domestic abuse jokes. I've often had a little bit of sympathy for this job in the way that I imagine if I witness jokes being made by surgeons when they're off duty or even perhaps on duty, but there are no non-medical people present, we'd probably think it was a little bit inappropriate. Tales about medical students hiding things in fridges to freak out their colleagues. I don't know if they still apply. They did when I was of university age. And it would be very different for a medical student to hide a recently removed organ in the hall of residence fridge than it would for a philosophy student. Do you see what I mean? You have to, I think, deploy some form of psychological protection measures when you are exposed regularly to potentially traumatic things. I imagine the jokes or the conversations that soldiers have with each other, particularly on tour, are going to be very, very different from the sort of jokes you'd expect footballers to make when they're on tour. You have to desensitize yourself, I suspect, to this kind of thing. So I could perhaps once have mustered up some sympathy for this sort of thing, but not anymore. Not anymore. This isn't desensitizing. This is insensitive people. This is crass, obnoxious people in uniform, not only treating the people they're supposed to care for with contempt, but also abnegating their most basic duty, which is, of course, to protect people from predators and abusers. It started, this review, after the David Carrick case. One of the worst serial sex attackers in British history, and a police firearms officer for the duration. I don't like saying their names out loud. I probably won't mention Sarah Everard's killer by name. I don't like naming them, but none of none of Carrick's victims are in sort of common parlance in the news agenda. So I have little choice but to mention him once. But the serial rapist firearms officer attacked at least 12 victims over a 20-year period, committed 85 serious crimes. The question inevitably arose, how the hell could he do that while still in the service? And the review of those past allegations was prompted by that discovery. In a letter today to the Home Secretary and the London Mayor, Mark Rowley has revealed that the Met has examined 1,131 past allegations of sexual or domestic violence by officers and staff against women from the last decade. 1,131. And guess how many of those instances satisfied police chiefs that the right decisions had been made to leave those accused in the force? 246 out of 1,131. So nearly 700 cases needed further work. 196 instances over 10 years to 2022, concerns serious enough that the officers would be re-vetted. So these are officers accused of things, possibly found to have done things, and then left in the police force. Now, I would normally, at this point, I don't think lazily, I've been doing the job long enough to know what works and what doesn't. I'd normally at this point say to you, how did this happen? How could this possibly happen? How could the police service become riddled with... I don't know why my swear machine is overworking today. I nearly did it again then. I don't know why the police... Why, I would say to you, how did the police service become riddled with scumbags? How did it become riddled with sexual and domestic abusers or rapists even, or at least people who make jokes about precisely the sort of crimes that the public take most seriously. And I would get calls, and I'd get calls from people, and I don't necessarily want to fall out with you yet, but I'd get calls from people who would say things like, well, James, I'm retired now, but it's all these graduates. That's the problem with the police. It's all these graduates coming in to the force. That's where it's all gone wrong. Or it's, you can't give a scrote a slap anymore. That's where. And I think that you've done obviously two terrible things. Those police officers that would ring me back in the day and talk about graduates coming in on fast tracks or political correctness preventing you from deploying common sense policing. For my money, at this point, this is on you. This is on you. Why? Because if you were honestly looking at the Metropolitan Police over the last 20 years and thinking that the problem was either political correctness or too many graduates coming into the force, it seems to me that you were waving through the sexual abusers, the misogynists, the racists, even perhaps the rapists. It was his bloody nickname, pardon my French. It was his nickname. Ringing me up telling me it's all about the graduates. Well, there's a bloke in your canteen whose nickname is the rapist. So I'm going to ask how this happened. 0345 6060 973. But I'm not sure who can answer that question. We touched on it, didn't we, a couple of weeks ago? Largely on the issue of race, and spoke to people who had appalling experiences. I'll never forget Joy Hendricks telling me her story. And it was a well-documented story that most people didn't know about. It was already out there. But how many officers are complicit in what happened to Joy? How many officers are complicit in the behaviour of colleagues who have stood accused of sexual or domestic violence and gone back to work? Who answers this question? People who couldn't put up with it anymore? People who blew the whistle and lived to rue it because blowing a whistle paints an enormous target ordinarily on the whistleblower's back? How does it go? I'll tell you something else for nothing. Sacking 20,000 officers for reasons of austerity, because, of course, the main reason for the global financial crisis in 2008 was that there were too many police officers in Sutton Coldfield, to paraphrase a brilliant Alexei Sale joke that I use possibly a little bit too often. Sacking all of them and then sort of boasting about rehiring them has made things immeasurably worse. Look at the calibre of copper that's coming into the force now. I'm hearing, so oddly, have quite good sources in this field, people who listen to the programme. It's not particularly strenuous journalism, and then get in touch via non-on-air channels. I'm hearing very grave concerns about the calibre of recruit coming in this desperate Boris Johnson-shaped attempt to bolster police numbers. It's all very well saying we are hiring thousands of new police officers, but hiring police officers who wouldn't pass muster in normal circumstances because A, morale is so low, B, the service is so riddled with racism, sexism and misogyny. Who's going to be attracted to the police service in the current climate? Who listening to this programme now is going, racism, sexism and misogyny, you say? Ooh, I shall have myself a piece of that, James. Who's going to apply in the current circumstances? So I think we've probably got an escalating problem, despite Mark Rowley's pledge to start rooting people out of the force in their hundreds. Who's going to be attracted to joining at the moment? How many people listening to this are going to go, oh, that is a job for me. I'm going to go into that rancid service. I'm going to go into that rancid environment and start cleaning up. I think, to be fair, that is the challenge that Mark Rowley has set himself. Only time will tell whether he's up to it. Only time will tell whether he really realised the scale of the challenge when he accepted it. But here it is. 0345 6060 973. Two questions. Weird, really, that one of them is, how the hell did this happen? How do you end up with a police service riddled with sexual and domestic abuse claims against officers, many of whom stay in post, but only discovered after the emergence of Metropolitan Police firearms officer being one of the country's most vicious serial rapists? How does it happen? How did it happen? But also, who can answer that question? 0345 6060 973. Who can answer that question? Hit the numbers now. You will get through. Who? Because I can't really now say. You can only ring me if you're a police officer. Because if you're a police officer, you're either guilty or complicit or alienated, chased out of the force. Is there a fourth option here? Part of the problem? Guilty of ignoring the problem or essentially hounded out of the job as a consequence of calling out the problem. I really hope there's a fourth lane, but I haven't found it yet, and we've had similar phone-ins in the past. 0345 60 973. And I'm sorry, I know it will upset some people, and I know the Bad Apple Brigade have a case of sorts to make, but I have spent too long sitting in this studio listening to people tell me about there being too many graduates and too much political correctness in the police force. Because if your ranks are full of sexual abuse and domestic abuse allegations, there was never anything like enough political correctness in the first place. 22 minutes after 10, the biggest corruption scandal for 50 years, says the head of the Metropolitan Police. Allegations of sexual or domestic violence by officers, neither satisfactorily nor properly investigated. Gross misconduct investigations. Checks now on 10,000 of the Met's 50,000 officers and staff show 38 cases of possible misconduct, 55 cases of potential association with a criminal, all of which would be investigated further. How did it happen? And who the hell can answer that question? Andrew's in Middlesbrough. Andrew, what would you like to say?
I've got experience working with this because I worked with the prison service for many years. I don't anymore. And what I found was it's very much a lack of accountability, a jolly boys club. I've seen officers who've sexually assaulted a member of staff and have been demoted from their management position, and within 2 years they're back where they were.
Is it reputation protection? Is it or is it a shortage of bodies so we can't actually... No. Go on, what is it?
No, reputation. It's all about reputation.
Always. Institutional reputational protection.
Yeah. It's about protecting the service, protecting your mate as well. I've seen many a case where mates are protected, people are protected from what's happened. Cases of people are just ignored. Whistleblowers have got no chance in the service, not a single chance of ever raising it, because I raised one concern and I was hounded out of work. I had to move to a different prison.
Right, just talk me through what happened, if you don't mind. You don't have to.
What happened was I was doing work at another prison, helping out.
Yeah.
And a member of staff gave a prisoner a baton.
Right.
So he was a violent criminal, and they were chatting, etc. Yeah. He was a violent criminal. And I said, what the hell do you think you're doing? Yeah. And I was told to F off.
Mind your own business.
Go away,
keep
mind
your
own
beak
business.
Out. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I just happened to be sort of in the area where lots of officers were, and they were all singing the green, green grass of home. People ostracised me, wouldn't talk to me.
Well, why is that? Why is that relevant?
Because I was talking about, I was grassing up an officer.
Oh yeah, sorry, I'm just being a bit slow on the uptake.
Grass of home, and I was ostracised, and nobody would talk to me for doing the right thing. So anybody that wants to do the right thing's got no chance.
How long did you last after that, if you don't mind me asking?
I lasted another 15 years. I went and worked at a different prison. But it's all about protecting your mate, protecting the service, protecting the reputation. And things are just ignored, routinely ignored. And I've seen evidence of it within the prisons, and I don't expect police to be any different.
I suspect that similar accusations can be levelled at all institutions, actually, in a sense. But there's something deeply wrong about it applying to institutions that are charged with protecting the public when they are more interested in protecting their own reputation. I think that's a brilliant opener, Andrew. I think that, I mean, it might seem obvious to some people, but to have it explained in terms is really helpful, because it removes some of the cloak of mystery, some of the, oh my gosh, it's so bewildering. Most institutions, whether they realise it or not, are structured in a way designed to protect themselves. My my full disclosure interview with Lucy Easthope, the emergency planner, touches a little bit on this issue. Why is the response sometimes to catastrophe and emergency so inadequate? And the answer is because people are prioritising the protection of the institution's reputation. You know, if God forbid a tower block catches fire, then politicians perhaps are not going to be thinking first and foremost about looking after the survivors. They're going to be thinking first and foremost about avoiding any responsibility for what might have happened. And so it applies everywhere. 27 after 10 is the time. Dan's in Chelmsford. Dan, what do you reckon?
Yeah, pretty much. Very similar to what your last caller said. So I've been out of the Met Police for 5 years. And my last experience of being in the Met, there's some great times and there's some absolute top class professionals, and a majority of them are, and I want to get that clear.
Okay. Normally I would have said at this point in this conversation, of course they are, absolutely right. I don't say that anymore, Dan. I can't lie to you.
Yeah. But I can only tell you my experience. Okay.
Of course.
So on my last posting 5 years ago in the Met, I was on a response team, and I want to say, this really.
Go on, take your time.
There's one girl on the team, bless her, and if people recognise my voice, they're going to know who I was talking about. Beautiful girl, lovely girl, in her 20s, and there was about 3 lads on the team who every briefing they would be hounding her, like saying comments about her looks, about going out on dates, sexual harassment. Yeah. Now, but I had a view that I joined up to do my 30 years and retire, so I didn't want to. I'd never be involved in that. I wanted to be a good, honest copper, like a lot of people on the team, and I never used to get involved in it. And the one time I turned around and I said to the guy, in front of everybody, I said, no, and if he's listening, he's going to know who I am. Okay. I said to him, you're never going to pull her, leave her alone. Yeah. And from that point onwards, the team turned. And the problem with this, James, I knew that was going to happen, or something was going to happen, and bit by bit by bit, that sense of, if you press your emergency button, somebody's going to come out and help you when it's all going wrong. Yes. Or if you need backup dealing with something, they're going to be there. That slowly started to edge away. Oh, mate. And then you think, like, was it really worth it? Because, I'm going to be going to his pub fight in Romford Town Centre. Yes. And I don't know if my team's going to be turning up because I've upset the apple cart. And it was the same with other officers. Like, the moment, like, anybody thought, the irony of this all, the moment anybody thought you was a grass because you'd speak out about wrongdoing or whatever, nobody would have anything to do with you. And then in the situations where you're right in the thick of it and your own personal device of risk, you got to know that people are coming to support you. Yeah. And the only way that's going to happen is by keeping your mouth shut,
is by being part of
getting involved.
Part of the problem, really. How long were you in for in the end?
Yeah, I was in the Met since for 6 years.
6 years, and you wanted to do the 30, but I sense a sort of erosion of your confidence as a consequence of a relatively low level intervention in unacceptable behaviour. Just simply saying, don't do it. Stop that.
Sorry, James, to cut in. Sorry, mate.
It's all right.
But I just want to say I left the Met because I was bullied by my sergeant. Yeah. And it all started rippling on because I wasn't getting involved with the so-called banter, the so-called jokes, and it was just like nitpicking bit by bit by bit.
You paint a target on your back.
Yeah, totally.
By doing what is right. That is institutional corruption, moral corruption, call it what you will. I feel for you, mate, actually. It's still, I can tell from your voice, it really hurt you, this. It really turned your life plan upside down, didn't it, really?
Well, kind of, but the funny thing is, right, when I come out, I said to my friends and my family, like, how it is and all the rest of it. And to some degree, they're like, oh, I can't believe it. It's a Met. whatever. Maybe you just had a problem. I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah.
And then all this has come out in the news, right? Yeah. And literally all of my mates are like, "Well, I don't believe it. Daniel's right." And I was like, "Yeah, mate. Yeah. That's how it was. That's how it is."
That's interesting. That's the bad apple theory in a nutshell, really, isn't it? Is that your mates are saying to you, you got unlucky, it's just bad apples. But what's coming out now, despite you saying at the beginning, the massive majority, it's almost like a reflex, Dan. You have to say the massive majority are all right. But actually, the massive majority do nothing when people like you stand up. And it's not as if you climbed up a ladder and started shouting the odds. It's a relatively low-level intervention, but it's enough to break that bond of collusion, isn't it? It's enough to break that bond. You either stay silent or you join in. And the ones that stay silent, from where I'm sitting, it looks to me like they probably undermine your confidence in the idea that the massive majority are all right. They stayed silent. You spoke up.
There you go.
There you go. Thank you, Dan. That's powerful stuff, actually, and particularly helpful, I think, because it didn't sound like Spartacus territory, did it? It's, you're never going to pull her, which is, a fairly innocuous intervention. You're never going to pull a lever alone. It's the lever alone bit that is that's the problem here, and that was enough. That's what his problem is. That's what Mark Rowley's got to deal with. How's he going to protect people like Dan in the future from that immediate, almost organic response from the pack to immediately single out and start chipping away at anyone who dares to question the orthodoxy? Thomas Watts is here now with your headlines. 10:36 is the time. The headline does the job, really. Met Police in biggest corruption scandal for 50 years. Widespread bungling of sexual and domestic abuse claims against officers. Now, probably less shocked than we would have been a couple of years ago by the existence of domestic and sexual abuse claims against officers, and less shocked than we would have been a couple of years ago by the fact that they haven't policed themselves. What is it? Qui custodiet custodes or something like that. I forget the Latin. I'll check with Keith in the break. The idea that they haven't properly investigated these kind of allegations or offences can hardly be surprising in a service that essentially sat on its hands while all manner of disgusting, quotes, banter, end quotes, unfolds on a daily basis, and where people like the Metropolitan Police firearms officer who attacked at least 12 victims over a 20-year period, and the murderer, of course, of Sarah Everard, can not only survive in this environment, but can survive despite colleagues having at least some inkling of what they were like. And you can tell that from the nicknames, and indeed from the WhatsApp groups. Teresa is in Manchester. Teresa, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. I'd like to say the Dan you just had on a moment ago is absolutely spot on.
He was great, wasn't he? He was really good.
He was absolutely spot on. I used to be a police officer until very recently.
Right.
And I got bullied out as well. And when you hit that state zero button, I got what Dan was worried about. When you hit that state zero button and people don't come.
State zero, you call it?
Oh, sorry, the emergency button. So when it all goes horribly wrong, you'll see it on TV shows, when it all goes horribly wrong, police officer will press a little button on top of their radio and everyone's meant to come running.
Oh, yeah, okay, yes.
That's called a state zero. It means emergency, essentially.
Yeah, sure,
help
I get it.
Now.
Yeah.
And every police officer is meant to, or the kind of camaraderie, blue line family idea is that you hit that state zero button and everyone comes running. When you hit that state zero button and people don't, it changes your thoughts on everything, because you only hit it when you really need to, and that's what you believe above everything.
Yeah, you have to.
Yeah, and because you won't go into the fight, you won't go into the scary house, you won't go and deal with whatever the terrifying thing is if you don't think you've got that backup. And when that backup suddenly stops coming, you don't speak up anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What had excluded you from that group, if you don't mind me asking? I'd
called a supervisor out on their behaviour. And so when I hit the state zero button, the supervisor stopped people going out. Yeah. But I don't know how you change it. I genuinely don't know how you change the police force now. You mentioned really early on at the start that people are either ignoring it or
Yes.
colluding in it, and you couldn't see another way. And for myself, and I don't want to do what Dan did, because you were right. You want to go, oh, there's some really good officers, then you can point out that there isn't. But you do have officers who go, this is awful, I really want to change it.
Yeah.
And they try, and I tried, and then you realise that you can't. And that's when you either go, well, I need to pay my mortgage, so I'm just going to pretend I can't see it. Or I can't take it anymore and I leave.
Yeah.
And the problem is you get institutionalised. You don't think there's anything else out there. And there really is. You can really get another job. But it's really difficult to see sometimes if all you think, because all the police force trains you to think is, I'm a police officer. I can't do nothing else.
Of course.
But you can. But they obviously don't make a big deal about making you realise you can.
Are there any pockets of sympathy, or were you completely isolated? Are there colleagues who may not stand up for you in public, but who will offer you their support quietly?
Oh yeah. You get that. Oh yeah, no. I mean, I chased it quite a long way up the rank structure,
right.
the issues with this particular supervisor. And, I got told, oh, yeah, no, we know what he's like. No. Yeah, no, we know what he's like. And you come away thinking, no, I've been heard, senior officers have listened to me. And then nothing changes.
Well, you're not talking about the Met, obviously, but it would be a miracle if this was unfolded, if this wasn't unfolding in other services as well. And that's the whole point, isn't it? The allegations are made, the evidence is provided, and the rug is lifted so that everything can be swept underneath it.
It's not just the Met. Rowley coming back is amusing, because he was there when he was there 10 years ago. So, he was part of the problem 10 years ago and he didn't fix it, and suddenly he's going to fix it now. Yeah. But you think about... I think
he was in charge of one of the sections where this kind of behaviour is at its worst as well.
Yeah, and you've got officers who leave the Met and go other places. Officers leave the Met and move to other county forces across the country, and
take their attitudes with them.
Institutional thing, exactly. And it's a force-wide thing. It's a countrywide thing. It's not just the Met. It's just the Met gets all the publicity.
Yes, of course it does. Perhaps inevitably, but I always see it as a lens through which we examine the whole of the police service. Most obviously in England and Wales. I don't want you to say, and you've said it now, that you can't see excuse me, that you can't see any answer, any solution. But the 3 calls we've taken so far, if it were my job, the first thing I would be doing would be trying to shore up this process of complaint and sticking with people who make a complaint and dealing with everybody in their orbit and making sure that's how you turn the oil tanker around, so that when Dan says, leave her alone, or when you say, this bloke's done that, or when, the first caller in a different context in a prison reports that somebody's done something entirely inappropriate, there should almost be a force field that is erected around you, and everybody sees it and everybody knows it's there. So even if people aren't minded to cooperate but they are being watched so closely that when you press your State Zero button, they're going to come even faster than they would have done before you blew the whistle. Do you see what I mean?
I do, but...
But you're a naive fool, James.
I won't go that far. No. The problem you've got is it goes all the way up and it goes all the way across. So if you complain about one person, other people are going to be like, well, who's to say you're not going to complain about me? And if you're doing the job badly, of course I'm going to point that out, and you would need such a really cliched phrase, such a root and branch reform across everything, across what policing does as a whole, because people want the force to be everything for everyone. They want police officers on the street walking around, and they want police officers being able to turn up really, really quickly when there's a burglary. And they want police officers sat in hospitals, and they want police officers in schools, and they don't want police officers in schools. And I think that's going to be part of the conversation. And we need to know what we want the police force to be, or the police service. Do we want a police force or a police service? You know, once we know what we want, then you can look at getting the right people in. But at the moment, personally, and you know, I know my experience is kind of gloomy, but personally, I kind of think I don't see how it gets any better.
No.
You know, the idea of going, right, okay, this officer's made a complaint, so you know, you have to be nice to them. It kind of goes against the whole idea of you know, we are police family and nobody says nothing in it.
I do. How are you getting on now, if you don't mind me asking?
I was ill for a long time.
Were you?
I was ill for a long time. I'm better now, kind of, and sometimes it hurts and sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
You know, because that myth of family. You asked who would join, and it's that myth of a policing family, and it's so pushed. It's pushed. So
I mean, it's a myth if you're you. I suppose it's not a myth if you're part of the problems that we're discussing. And that's
true.
That's terrible, really. You know, it's a great loyal camaraderie if you're turning a blind eye to corruption or to abuses, but if you're standing up for what is right, there's no such thing as a thin blue line.
Oh, there is. It's just immensely thin.
It's just getting so thin. It's the thin blue dental floss we're talking about here.
Yeah,
the thin blue gossamer thread. Thank you, Teresa. I'm so sorry that you're in such a strong position to comment on this subject, as indeed are all my callers. There it is. So at least we've got an answer to the question of who can answer the question of how this was allowed to happen. And there's a pretty grim consensus emerging, but it is what I feared it would be. The people who've tried to make things better and who have been essentially hounded out of the force. The fourth option, this is nice, from a loving parent. You've just joined the Met, James. You're outraged. You're shocked at what you've found. You want to do whatever you can do to help to put it right, just like my daughter, says John in Leeds. And those are the people Mark Rowley needs to gather around him, I think, ASAP. It is 10:50. You are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Someone should make a list of the genres, plural, into which many of our conversations can be filed. You know, the increasingly popular is, are they lying or just too stupid to realise how wrong they are? You might call that the Dorries paradigm, or the Rees-Mogg, actually. Let's call that one the Rees-Mogg. Actually lying or just too stupid to realise how wrong they are about, you name it, really. There's lots of that. I think Suella Braverman is currently carrying the Jacob Rees-Mogg mantle of ignorant or lying. But there's another one as well, and it's chronological. It's the one about, would this have happened? Could you have got away with this 10 years ago? I think we'll call that the Cummings conundrum, shall we? No, it's because it's pure Johnsonian, or it's the Brexit backlash. The behaviours, you know, like being found to be a bully while you're Home Secretary, having a massive payoff made to someone that you were found to have bullied, being found to be a bully by the independent advisor to the Prime Minister, and then the Prime Minister just tears up the report, throws it away, the advisor resigns, and Priti Patel stays in the Home Office. That wouldn't have happened. Even under Theresa May, that wouldn't have happened. Even Liz Truss gave Suella Braverman her sandwiches wrapped in a roadmap after an egregious breach of the ministerial code, but Rishi Sunak brought her back 6 days later. So that question, what would have happened back in the day? You know, when I started doing this job, I could just about have got away with saying, I'm too young to remember. I barely know who John Profumo was. I only know because of that rather splendid film Scandal. I don't remember John Stonehouse. Who was Cecil Parkinson was probably my introduction to the political scandal, and he had to leave the cabinet after getting his secretary pregnant. Probably get promoted these days for that. Certainly under Boris Johnson, it would have been rather hard to make that an offence, wouldn't it? So Scott Benton, the MP for Doncaster South, who I think first came to our attention a few weeks ago after he stood up in the House of Commons and claimed that millions of people were trying to come to this country. So he is one of those 2019 Tories around whom light somehow bends. So dense is he. But he's been caught bang to rights, offering the contents of his sock drawer, his grandma, keys to his car, offering it pretty much anything to some people pretending to be from a gambling company. And I don't know whether this is something that in previous years would have prompted a bonfire of outrage. He's had the whip taken away, but he is there. He's on tape. Even after the Led by Donkeys stuff that got Hancock and Kwasi Kwarteng and others, this fella is so mince-like that he... yeah, absolutely. I'll play you some of it, I think, hopefully. But then I think there's a phone in. Just in the question of whether or not we are all too close to the action that we lose sight of the bigger picture. But before we do that, back to the Met and the question of how this happened and who can actually answer the question of how this has happened. Stuart's in Brixworth in Northamptonshire. Stuart, what would you like to say?
Hi.
Hello, mate.
Hi, James. First time on your show.
Welcome.
Obviously, I'm a bit nervous.
Don't, it's only me. How long were you in the police force for?
I was in the force for 20 years.
Well, you can't be nervous talking to me then. That's not allowed. That's ridiculous.
No.
That's ridiculous.
I mean, I didn't tell you research. I was actually medically retired due to the job. However, I worked in a county force.
Yes.
I think the service, it's a wake-up call. Many years. It just saddens me that the service has got to this level.
How has it got to this level? We've had loads of wake-up calls in the time I've been doing this job, and I'm still young.
Yeah, same here. I'm similar age to you, so I can understand where you're coming from. I don't know what the answer is. The answer is, like I said to your researcher, it seems to be the Met is that big, people manage to hide away, or...
But no, we can't have that. They're not hiding away. It's the opposite.
You think so,
yeah? They look at Dan saying, look, oi, just leave her alone. And then suddenly he's the one that is persona non grata. He's the one being hidden away. He's the one being cold-shouldered.
Yeah, having not so much experience on my side, in my force, I know this may sound quite rare to say this, but in my force, if they had any officers stepping out of line, they were actually out of the job. And there was many officers that did get fired for being inappropriate or even just making comments or even associating with criminals.
Really?
Yeah,
That's
I
good
can
to know.
say
I mean,
that.
it can happen. You do read about it.
Absolutely. I agree with you there. The problem is that also the forces themselves, I saw it, I saw sergeants that used to bully staff. All they would do is just move them around and not deal with the problem. And I think that's a problem with it. They will not deal with the problem. Either senior officers find it too much hassle to deal with it, or they don't want to deal with it.
Yeah, that's the twin prong, isn't it? So on the one hand, you've got conscious and deliberate reputational protection. We can't have this. We don't want this firework. But on the other hand, you've got, have you any idea what a palaver it is to follow these complaints through to conclusion? Something else Mark Rowley can put on his to-do list is make it easier for supervisors, the first point of complaint, make their job, make it easier for them to do what needs to be done.
Absolutely. I agree with you.
Especially
100%.
if there are staffing problems, that this is, you're adding to people's pile to their in tray, aren't you? You're adding to people's to-do list, and they're looking at trying to get their to-do list down, which is a natural response, albeit one that's unacceptable in these circumstances. What about the attitude that county forces have to the Met? Because Teresa, I think, was probably... here we go. It was the right question. Teresa, I think, was in GMP, so that, it would seem to me, is in the more closer to the same category as the Met. What does a force like yours think? Do you see that you all part of one big happy family?
I unfortunately I don't keep in contact with any of my previous colleagues, because of one thing or another, my force, unfortunately, due to my nervous breakdowns, etc., they weren't very supportive at all. However,
that's part of the problem, isn't it?
It was common saying my force, if the Mets come in here, we better make sure we lock our police vans if we did operations with them, so like mutual aid for public order operations, because they'll nick anything. That was a common...
I'm sure that was partly in jest, before I get bombarded with outraged members of the Metropolitan Police. But I'm sorry for your trouble, Stuart. I really am. But I'm also grateful for the insight. You can't go on, really, if you believe that everything and everyone is rotten to the core. And today's hour, unlikely though it may seem, given the opening, actually reminds us that there are good people. But the bad apple theory, I'm afraid, has blown up now. It's gone completely. And it's Blackpool South. Apparently, I said Doncaster. I didn't mean to. I know it's Blackpool South for that Benton character, but that's Doncaster has suffered enough. My first home was in Doncaster, so. Blackpool South, we may be looking at in the next hour. Jed's on the Isle of Man. Jed, what would you like to say?
There's a couple of elements that contribute to this problem. The police attracts some wonderful people who join for the right reasons.
I hope so.
They're able to solve, community issues, have the excitement of dealing with crime and all kinds of matters that makes the job so enjoyable. And those officers are super keen and they're on the front line, but quite often they don't have the time or the skills to navigate through a really complicated promotion process. Okay?
Yeah.
The people that are able to do this, quite often they can be taken on through their academic skills, their graduates and so forth. And they manage to wheedle their way up.
You didn't hear my introduction, Jed.
Okay.
Jed, you didn't hear the top of the show. I said I've spent 20 years hearing from ex-coppers about how the problem's been caused by graduates, and I'm afraid you're wrong. The problem's been caused by rapists and by colleagues who make jokes about them and give them funny nicknames.
I'm not saying that.
Well, that's what you just said.
That. No, what I'm saying is that you've got people who are working the front line dealing with day-to-day issues.
No, I don't. It doesn't wash anymore, mate.
Just hang on.
No, I won't hang on. No, I won't hang on. The police service is full of sexual abusers. It's full of misogynists. It's full of racists. That's not the fault of the graduates, mate. That's the fault of the people who complain about the graduates.
What I'm saying is the ability of those people to control the situations in the canteen.
Absolute cobblers.
And I would say
absolute
that
cobblers. Why can't you call your colleagues out?
It's down to leadership.
Why can't you call your colleagues out?
It's having the right.
Why can't you call your colleagues out? Why can't you call your colleagues out?
What, you're talking about me as an individual?
Yeah. Why do you have to wait for a graduate to do it?
I challenge everything. If you're talking about my own personal position,
of course you are.
That's not where we are.
No, it is. Of course it is. We're talking about you're either part of it, you're either complicit, or you're hounded out of the force for blowing the whistle. Were you hounded out of the force for blowing the whistle?
My story is another story.
Well, I look forward to hearing it, but I'm not taking any more calls from old coppers claiming that it's all the fault of graduates and political correctness. Well, you've got rapists sitting in your canteen with nicknames referring to their attitude to women. Have a great weekend, officer. 3 minutes after 11 is the time. This is an astonishing sting. It's astonishing for a bunch of reasons. It's astonishing because the victim of the subject of the sting, there ain't no victim here. It's astonishing because the subject of the sting is such an almighty arse. That's not a word I'm going to use repeatedly in the course of this conversation. I am limited by Ofcom on what words I can use, and then I'm doubly limited by Eleanor and Keith, who keep a very close eye on me and often tell me not to use words that I then Google with Ofcom and find out that I am actually allowed to use. No, don't look at me like that. Last time we did it, we but also, this is, as radio goes, this is more Plato's Symposium than Seize the Geezer. So we obviously have to be aware of the fact that we have a reputation for intellectual rigour and moral probity. But this bloke's an arse, all right? And that's the last time I'm going to say it. His name's Scott Benton, and he is the MP for Blackpool South. And I've done it now. It's like, this is terrible. I want to keep saying it. I'm like, that's really weird. That's psychological, right? I just want to keep saying the word that, but that's actually too kind. So that's the first thing that's remarkable about this sting, is that the bloke is so stupid that you sit here going, is this some sort of sophisticated ruse that I am not in on? Is this a game of 4D chess that I can't follow? Is he pretending to be so thick that light would bend around him in order to turn around at close of play today and go, ha ha, April Fool? Or is he really this stupid? Did the good voters of Blackpool South really put this human thumb into the House of Commons? Needless to say, he's part of the 2019 intake. One of Boris Johnson's legacies, which will probably be quite short-lived, is that by chucking lots of decent people out of the Conservative Party, he created a vacuum into which all sorts of flotsam and jetsam could move unchallenged. And then, of course, a combination of his lies about Brexit and the inadequacy of the Labour leader at the time created these new constituencies in the north of England where frankly, a joint of gammon wearing a blue rosette could have got elected to Parliament in seats that had never previously returned a Conservative candidate. So that's reason number one why this is a remarkable story. Reason number two is that they just turned over Matt Hancock and Kwasi Kwarteng and a couple of other people. Even Sir Gavin of Williamson, Even he smelt a rat. If Gavin Williamson can smell a rat and you can't, you've probably got quite a severe case of COVID, I would suggest. And that happened before the Times went after Scott Benton, MP for Blackpool South. That's the second most remarkable thing about it. And the third most remarkable thing about it is how, I don't know whether this plays into reason number one, his epic stupidity, but I don't think it does. Well, it does. It's an intersecting reason why this is remarkable. It's the detail into which he goes about the rules or the conventions that he's prepared to break. For me, the big one is he guaranteed he could... So some people pretending to be gambling company lobbyists or people from a big betting and gaming outfit, right? First of all, how does that happen? First thing I do these days when I get a request to turn up at something is you check the provenance of what you're doing, even if it's something as relatively innocuous as a literary festival. You want to make sure that you haven't got, a kind of neo-Nazi author appearing the next day, or that the literary festival actually exists, or that this isn't the first one, or that they don't have a reputation for not paying their bills. There's all sorts of things you do. You just find out a little bit about the people that have issued you an invitation if you've never heard of them before. And he didn't even do that. One has to presume. So he thought he was speaking to gambling industry investors, and they proposed paying him thousands of pounds a month. In return, and wait for this, this is really important, okay? He guaranteed that he could leak a copy of a forthcoming white paper on gambling reforms to this company at least 48 hours before it went public. Now that, the Times explains today, could potentially allow the company to profit from market-sensitive information. It sounds like insider trading, doesn't it? Giving people information from which they can profit that is not yet publicly available. Thick as mince. He offered to... It's worse than being stupid. This is actually, it would appear to me to be, fairly barefaced corruption. Obviously, we will wait until the inquiry is concluded before we can say that with certainty or not say it at all. He offered to submit parliamentary questions and said he had done it on behalf of companies before. Isn't that what Neil Hamilton got into trouble for originally? Cash for questions, I think. Okay. He boasted of his easy access to ministers and said he was prepared to, quote, literally sit outside a minister's office if the company needed an urgent answer to a question, presumably as long as the price was right. And he said he would call in favours from colleagues who would be happy to support the company's interests and offered to host a dinner at the Commons. I'll play you a little clip in a minute from this really quite exceptional Times investigation undertaken by their senior investigations reporter, Billy Kember. And it's a shared byline on the front page story today with Arti Nakiapan. I am going to ask you my simple question. I'm not going to give it would this have happened back? Because that's all part of it. I'm just going to open up the phone lines. And I want you to tell me what you think about this story. And that will then encompass various different strands, because you may think they're all as bad as each other, in which case we'll have a bit of an argument. You may think it's not as big a deal as I am portraying it to be, in which case we'll have a bit of an argument. You may think it's symptomatic of a much deeper malaise at the very heart of post-Brexit Britain in general, or the post-Johnson, post-Brexit Conservative Party in particular. You may think it's a mark of something much deeper and worse than that. It's a mark of our declining democracy, our diminishing democracy. When Dominic Cummings looked down the barrel of a camera and claimed that he was testing his eyes when he drove to Barnard Castle and back, client journalists and colleagues, cabinet members queued up to defend him, and even those who knew he was lying and didn't queue up to defend him didn't do anything like enough to hound him out of his job before he ended up in charge essentially of our COVID response. When Priti Patel was found to be an appalling bully, and rather than punish her, Boris Johnson tore up the homework, tore up the report, threw it away, and accepted the resignation of the bloke who'd found her to be a bully. These are big, big moments, you know? When Liz Truss began possibly to fix some of the damage that had been done, and I say that with an incredible sense of incredulity, by sacking Suella Braverman for breaching the ministerial code. Any hopes that some green shoots of probity were finally springing up in the heart of Downing Street were mowed swiftly to the floor when Rishi Sunak succeeded her and gave Suella Braverman her job back 6 days later. This absolute collapse in what has never been perfect, but used to be all we had to guard against corruption and malfeasance and misbehaviour. The cronyism of these COVID contracts is never going to be fully exposed. It's never going to be fully understood. It's about a year since the National Crime Agency knocked on Michelle Moan's door. Don't know what's going on there. Don't know whether she has a case to answer, do we? Listen to my full disclosure with Carol Vorderman for more on that and other issues. But this is the thing. It's happened again, hasn't it? I thought this was going to be a relatively easy ride into the quarter past, and then you'd start ringing me. But this is right. Pay attention. Come here. When I do an intro and I start off calm, and even perhaps witty, and by the end of it I'm angry, that is a mark of being not gaslit, but of the normalisation of awfulness. Because I approach a story like this and I'm thinking, oh, well, is it that bad? How are we going to get the phone stopped? And then the more I read it to you, as opposed to just reading it in my own head, the more I read it to you, the more I realise how absolutely outrageous and egregious this is. I'm 51 years old, right? So I have I became really deeply politically conscious after I got this job about 20 years ago. I've got a fairly good palate. I have a politics in A-level as well, so I'm familiar with things that went on before I was fully engaged in politics. But when you hear my voice go up octave by octave every 5 minutes, it's because I am genuinely incredulous. But I'm also shrugging off, in the course of these interminable introductions, I'm shrugging off the normalisation. Because the first time it happens, we all howl, right? First time something terrible happens, the first time there's a diminishment in our democratic norms, we all go, oh my God! Second time it happens, we go, oh my God! Third time it happens, we go, oh, my God. Fourth time it happens, we go, oh. Fifth time it happens, we go, Sixth time it happens, we go, what? Seventh time it happens, we go, meh. Eighth time it happens, we go, well, there's two sides to every. Ninth time it happens, we go, we should talk about something else here. 10th time it happens, don't know really. Who? Scott who? What? And then I start explaining it to you, which demands a slightly different level of engagement with the story, and I cannot believe the words that I am uttering. He guaranteed he could leak a copy of a forthcoming white paper on gambling reforms to the company at least 48 hours before it went public. He offered to submit parliamentary questions and said he'd done it before on behalf of companies, presumably companies that were paying him, presumably. He boasted of easy access to ministers and said, if I was a minister and I saw him coming down the corridor, I'd run in the opposite direction at 100 miles an hour, and we're in the same party. He claimed that many MPs who accepted corporate hospitality were willing to table a written question or make a point during oral questions in return. I don't go to race meetings, but if you do, you can't swing a cat for fear of hitting a politician around the chops with the little pussycat. They're absolutely everywhere. Poor old Carol Vorderman went to the races the other day and bumped into Matt Hancock, of all people. They accept more hospitality from the gambling industry than they do COVID contracts from their mates. I don't understand why he's still in a job. Never mind having the whip removed. There's got to be a stronger response to this. It'd be so easy. One of the first things Rishi Sunak could have done would have been restoring a little bit of integrity. Not a lot, because he was obviously hand in glove with Johnson for most of Johnson's premiership. But the first thing he could do is just get rid of people who cross the line. Absolutely. Like Starmer does. So allegations against Starmer, that's it, you lose the whip. The former leader of the Labour Party is no longer a member of the Parliamentary Labour Party. You might hate that. You might howl at the moon. You might fall asleep in your muesli every morning. But that is what you do if you want to convince people that you've got a hold on your party and that you are imposing standards. Sunak could have done that. First thing he did, give Suella Braverman a job back 6 days after she's been forced to walk the plank by Liz Truss for breaching the ministerial code. Absolutely all bets are off. What's he going to do? What can he do? Hey, get rid of this dude. Well, Braverman's still in the Home Office. I don't know. But I do know this. We deserve better. And the mad thing about my political journey over the last 7 years is I spend much of my life thinking that you deserve better. Even if you've got a bulldog avatar on your Twitter account, even if you've got, all manner of nonsense about Brexit still bubbling away in the back of your brain, even if you think that all the problems in your life have been caused by some Afghan translator crossing the channel in a dinghy, even if you think that, I don't know what it is this week, probably trans, you deserve better. You deserve better. This bloke standing up in the House of Commons talking about how millions of people are trying to come here, and then going backstage after that obscene speech and breaking bread with people, pretending. He hasn't even got the wit to realise he's being mugged, pretending to be from the gambling industry and offering them everything from the contents of your sock drawer to early access to a government white paper on gambling reform. 0345 60973 is the number that you need. Can I do a topic on how do you stay angry? I think I might, when there's so much of it. And don't come it with your two sides or they're all as bad as each other. This is about having access to power. Labour haven't had any power for 13 years. Let them get in and then go after them like a rat up a drainpipe. I certainly will if they ever engage in behaviours like this. But just take your scarf off for 10 seconds. Stop allowing it to cut off the flow of blood to your brain. This isn't about Diane Abbott or David Lammy or whoever you're holding up today as a counterbalance to this obvious and egregious conduct. This is about all of us. This is about the body politic. This is about our democracy. And this is about people who have somehow infiltrated it at the highest levels, who are not fit to lace your boots. Scott Benton. He's one of a kind. I mean, he's not one of a kind. He's one of a type, isn't he? You've got 30p Lee over there and that Gullis character over there and Brendan Double Barrel over there, all competing to be the nastiest, stupidest member of the 2019 intake. This dude just got his papers served, didn't he? What does it make you think, this story? What does it make you think? And do you know what? Let's take a day off as well. What does it make you feel? 0345 6060 973. Tory MP in gambling cash for access scandal. Politician offered to lobby ministers on behalf of betting industry in return for payments. What does it make you think and what does it make you feel? 0345 6060 973. It's 11:19. 22 minutes after 11. It's always the ones you most suspect, isn't it? Here's Scott Benton, MP for Blackpool South.
That's a very good question. Probably the direct ear of a minister who's actually going to make these decisions. So, two different. I'll be entirely honest. I'll speak as a non-politician, having worked in PR in the past. PR agencies are absolutely great. They have established set of contacts. They know how to work the room, etc. The one thing they don't have is direct access to a government minister. We vote in House Commons 2 or 3 times a day. We'll be voting later. You will literally stand at the beginning, at the entrance to the voting lobby, and if you wait there for 5 minutes, the minister has to pass you, and then you've got 10 minutes while you walk around to the next vote to have his ear. We can obviously put parliamentary questions on the table, so PCMS questions on Thursday, so we can ask things in a direct manner in public to see if the reaction we get is consistent with what we get in private, which isn't always the case. There's written questions as well, where we can table things on the public record and get an instant response within 5 working days on any question whatsoever, which obviously nobody else outside the political realm can.
So there you have it. Go on, just tell me what you feel about that, what you think about that. And I would like just to impose a slight sense of whether or not this would have prompted a very different response in previous years, in previous times. Leah's in Brighton. Leah, what would you like to say?
Good morning, James.
Hello.
I would like to say despair is the word for me, just utter despair at how we are continuing to hear one scandal after another. But as the public, we just I don't know if we laugh it off. I know I certainly don't. But that we're not really doing anything about it. But I think the reason why these MPs, the rules do not apply, which we already know this. We know the rules don't apply to them. They can have parties. That's all right. We can shrug it off. And I also think that they all have Dominic Cummings, etc., etc. They're just so arrogant. They are so arrogant that they can just go, oh, yeah, because the rules don't apply to us. It must be in their company, in their manifesto somewhere for their own members that, yeah, this is the free ticket. You can do whatever the bloody hell you like, because the rules do not apply to you.
Well, we've seen Margaret Ferrier, who the former SNP MP, get into a lot of trouble, a big enough suspension to prompt possibly a by-election. And here's the line, that the MP's code of conduct has a clause against, and I quote, significantly damaging, end quotes, the Commons' overall reputation. So I mean, I think that is almost an open and shut case here. Would it be absurd of me to suggest that Rishi Sunak might actually do the right thing in this case? The whip has been removed fairly swiftly. An inquiry is underway, or an investigation is underway. I mean, I don't know. This is the bit where I say I don't want to start saying everything's gone to hell in a handcart, because maybe in previous years we'd actually be watching the same process unfold. I forget what the full course of the Neil Hamilton story, but he stayed, didn't he? He only went, I think, after Martin Bell beat him in Tatton.
Absolutely, and it's the arrogance of them, you know. And as you said before, you would check, wouldn't you? You would look into these research. The same with the £60,000 for going to a little meeting. That you would look, and I just think they are so arrogant and think they are better than everyone else, all of us, and that the rules don't apply. And it's just, despair. I think what worries me the most, despair, is the fact that, you know, as a country, we're all sitting here, me and my partner sat here last night and talked about it all evening. You know, what, as a country, are we doing about any of this?
Well, there it is. And this is...
I know that people are striking.
Yeah.
But it's not enough, really. We all know what we need to see change in this country, but it's never going to happen. Therefore, we'll just carry on, you know. We'll eat our dinner and go to bed, have a little moan about it and carry on. But it frightens me for the future, really.
Let's do the why of it as well then. Thank you, Leah. Is how has this been allowed to take place? No one's going to be surprised by my theory, but when you have an entire political era, an entire political epoch built upon complete lies, built upon the absolute nonsense of Brexit, lie after lie after lie, and then 2, if not 3, successive prime ministers post Theresa May, up to a point including Theresa May, which makes it 4, all propelled to power by inflating and sustaining those lies, then the truth becomes an almost alien concept. Not just in the context of Brexit. You've still got Braverman saying it's got nothing to do with Dover or whatever the latest nonsense may be. The entire stage upon which these people stand is built of Brexit and to a lesser extent Boris Johnson. So why the hell should they care about the truth? Or why the hell should they care about tradition? Or why the hell should they care about standards when they have all been torched in pursuit of the mythical unicorns? And that's why the 2019 intake is so unpleasant, because that's what they've been weaned on. They've been weaned on Brexit lies and xenophobic othering. They've been weaned on it. It's what essentially propelled them into Parliament. The threat of all these Turkish people coming here, or the claim that we were going to be better off, or that Europe wished us ill. So that, for me at least, is part of the problem. If the truth doesn't matter anymore, and if the people getting propelled into Downing Street from Boris Johnson down are studies, really, in moral corruption and political depravity, why should a no-mark like Scott Benson worry about the rules? I noticed that my next caller is in Blackpool, so I shall wait until after the news before I go to her. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Don't forget that today is Thursday, despite me having a very Friday feeling. So I'm off for the whole of the long weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. It is Thursday, which means that it is Mystery Hour in about half an hour's time. Now, though, it's Thomas Watts with your headlines. It is 33 minutes after 11 and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. He wouldn't have gone yesterday, would he, in a previous era? As soon as the footage emerges of Scott Benton offering all sorts of services to people he thought were from the gambling industry, would he? In a previous era, he wouldn't have gone overnight. Would he? I don't think he would. He's lost the whip. I mean, it's appalling behaviour. I take issue with this, Dave, in Wimbledon. Not issue, but I don't know that I agree. Without trying to excuse their behaviour, writes Dave, it's worth noting that most of this class of 2019 Red Wall Tories will have known from the start that they were likely to be one-term MPs who will lose seats in 2024 once the Brexit bubble had burst. They've been preparing for their post-Parliament careers since January 2020. I disagree, mate. I think they're like Billy Buncher numbers on Twitter. They actually believe, some of them still do. It's all, you just have to believe harder, or it's been sabotaged by Remainers. I don't think they'd have stood. People believe Boris Johnson. It's why Britain is in such a mess. That's the point. They believe Boris Johnson. So they didn't come into power thinking, oh, this is great. I'm on the coattails of a massive liar. I'm going to fill my boots until 2024 and then go back to my job in, I don't know, whatever it is that Scott Benton is qualified to do. God only knows. But I honestly don't think so, Dave. They didn't think, oh, here he is, big old Boris telling lies. They're going to get me into Parliament, and then obviously it'll all fall apart at some unspecified point in the near future, and I'll have to go back to flipping burgers. Or just a figure of speech. I don't know. So, no, I disagree with that. I do. They thought it was a great idea. Have a look around. There's still, Rees-Mogg. That's what they thought. When Jonathan Gullis said, this is true, by the way, you're not going to believe me. When Jonathan Gullis said, when I was a teacher, I used to model myself. I used to create a character based on a mixture of Boris Johnson and Jacob Rees-Mogg. I just thought, good grief. That's who is now attracted. That's who's now getting into Parliament. Someone who stood in front of a classroom full of children and cosplayed Boris Johnson and Jacob Rees-Mogg. Cosplay is kind of like modern lingo for dressing up as someone, like, Banana Man. Well, it involves, it's more complicated than that anyway. Dungeons and Dragons kind of stuff. He cosplay. Imagine that. Imagine cosplaying. I mean, Jacob Rees-Mogg is cosplaying a penny farthing anyway. So you're cosplaying a cosplayer. You're dressing up as someone who's dressing up as someone. It's just nuts. And these are the people that are in Parliament. So, but I don't know whether or not it is fair to say this wouldn't happen a few years ago. His feet wouldn't have touched the floor. Kaylee is in Blackpool. Kaylee, what do you reckon?
Hi. It's funny you should say about going back to flipping burgers, because one of Scott Benton's new candidates for the local Tory party is Mr. Pound Burger, Chris Higgett. And yeah,
hello, darling.
4-year-old in the background.
Fair enough. Don't get me into trouble, because I've got lots going on now. I've got the 4-year-old in the background. I've got you saying names that I've never heard before, and I've got. So don't. When you say his, you mean one of the people he's running against?
No, running for because we've got the local elections.
Yeah, no, we can't talk about the local elections. Just I need to attract the producer's attention at this point. We can't talk about the local elections at all at the minute.
Plenty of other things to talk about.
No, that's fine. So just talk to me about this this footage of Scott Benton that has emerged and how you feel about it.
He's on the APPG he's the chair for the gambling APPG.
He is. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. And it's quite shocking. So obviously Blackpool's a really deprived area. it's been long believed that he was taking money from the betting companies, and obviously he was found to have accepted tickets.
There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing. You're scaring the bejesus out of me, Kaylee. I mean, you're clearly on your hobby horse here. It's something you know an awful lot about. You're allowed to take tickets. You're allowed to accept hospitality as long as it's declared. I think you can say that you suspect him, but anything would be in the register of members' interests, and even this would have been in the register of members' interests if he'd gone ahead and signed the contract. No, it would. I can tell I'm right to be worried now, Kaylee. You can't say stuff that you can't support in court.
Okay.
You see what I mean? So just give me your emotional response to the fact that your MP has been filmed undercover offering to, for example, leak a copy of a forthcoming white paper on gambling reforms to people that he thought were representatives of a gambling company 48 hours before it went public.
It's absolutely shocking. It literally it confirms everything we already know about him.
Suspect. It confirms everything that we suspect, that you suspect about him.
Maybe that you suspect, but the people in Blackpool who may have met him, maybe they know. I've had a few meetings myself with Mr. Benton. One where he delighted in shouting some obscenities across a pub in front of lots of families and children. But
was that reported?
Was it reported? I've got audio.
No, I'm going to have to stop it now. Seriously, this is. You're giving me. I'm supposed to be breaking up early today at 1 o'clock. You're giving me palpitations. I shall check and all, but I'm sure he would deny that he had shouted obscenities at you across a pub. All sorts of things going on there. Thank you, Kaylee. I wish you well, but I don't have. It's not the BBC. I haven't got a crack team of lawyers scribbling away in the next room, hanging on your every word. I'm flying more or less solo. So I register your disgust, and we move on. Kathy is in Axminster. Kathy, what would you like to say?
Hello, James.
Hello, Kathy.
Sent you lots of little texts over the years, but I've never actually gone.
And this one is the one that prompted you to pick up the phone.
It is, because you were asking me how I feel.
Yes.
And I'm so angry. And you were saying, how do we manage our anger?
Yes.
God knows, but if we don't manage it, it's depression. And I think the UK is in depression at the moment. But anyway, why I rang in was with the latest disclosure that this Tory MP, was out for, greedy rather than needy.
Cash for access, which you're not allowed to do, really.
Oh God. I mean, what really depresses me, I've got a son who's coming up to 60, and he's often said recently, they're all the same, I'm not voting, blah, blah, blah. And it's so depressing because I will always vote and I will always care because I'm very political and I keep in touch. But what's the hope for people who feel like he does, They're
the people I worry about most, because it's been very deliberately created. That's how you do it, isn't it? If you've got 13 years in power, an 80-seat majority, and it's all built on lies and nonsense and xenophobic othering, when it all starts falling apart, all you've got left is, well, the other lot are just as bad as us anyway.
And just blaming, ethnic minorities and boat people and God knows, I know there's complex issues to sort, but my God, I mean, when you look at the what we've got in the cabinet at the moment, is Suella Braverman. God.
I know. No one deserves that. How would a story like this land with your boy? Your boy is nearly 60, with your son? When he sees footage like this, and because this one has set off blue touch paper, it's prompted entirely justified outrage. So there's something about undercover stings that appeals to the sort of old News of the World readers in all of us. But how would it reach your son, do you think?
To be honest with you, he's having a struggle at the moment with cost of living and having to work for God knows, less than he's worth. I think his reaction to this would be, well, they're all the same, they always were. And I have trouble getting through to it.
Well, that might be a challenge for next week, actually. How do you explode the notion that they've all got their noses in the trough, or that? I remember when, I forget which one it was, but it was a QC earning hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds while acting for a foreign government, and people sort of say, well, it's no different to David Lammy presenting a show on LBC at the weekend. And you're just like, well, if you honestly believe that, I'll explain to you why it's hugely different. But you don't honestly believe it. You've just got some words that fill the space where your brain should be. And that's, I think, whether they're all as bad as each other comes from. And that's where you hope that Starmer, the speed with which Starmer suspends people when they are under suspicion, might have buttered some parsnips. But where's that going to get reported? 2 weeks of Keir Starmer's innocuous curry. 2 weeks of front pages in the Daily Mail. 2 weeks of it. And then the same media outlets simultaneously trying, A, to pretend that Boris Johnson hadn't done anything wrong, B, that Sue Gray's report was a damp squib that didn't prove anything, and C, that she has colluded in an enormous scandal that was designed to deliberately bring down Boris Johnson. They don't really care whether it makes sense or not. They just care whether there are enough words to fill the space where people's brains should be. It is 11:47. I'm probably going to be apologising to Neil and Martin, who's also in Blackpool, which I probably won't be taking his call after Kayleigh gave me the heebie-jeebies, and John in Stroud and others, because I've got quite a lot to squeeze in before Mystery Hour. First up, James Farrer, who, when I ask questions about why we are not doing more to object to the things going on around us, is one of the names that often springs to mind, the General Secretary of the App Drivers and Couriers Union and the founder of the Worker Info Exchange. You'll remember, James, going into battle for Uber drivers or food delivery drivers against, quote marks, employers and end quotes, who weren't really providing the sort of support or service that they were entitled to. You've been in Amsterdam, James. Tell me why.
Good morning, James. You'll remember from the Supreme Court that battle was all about misclassification, where these platform companies are, describing you as self-employed, a booking entrepreneur rather than a worker. And the big message from the Supreme Court is that those types of misclassified contracts must end, that the statutory protections must stand.
So, that's the point. The statutory protections don't apply to self-employed staff. They do apply to staff, and it's very much in the interests of the app owners, the app companies, not to have to provide the statutory protections that ordinary workers enjoy.
Indeed, and if you can't rely on these contracts that the courts described as fictitious to achieve that misclassification, then you have to have other means. And those other means, increasingly, not just for gig economy workers, is hidden algorithmic control.
Yeah.
So the management is concealed. So we went to Amsterdam to file cases on behalf of workers who had been dismissed for alleged fraudulent activity that had been detected by the system. But they never had the allegations put to them. They never had a chance to answer them. They never had a chance to test them. And that turns out to be a violation of the Data Protection Act, the GDPR, where you've got a right to protect automated decisions like that affect you, like being fired or having your pay cut or not getting enough work. And we had a very successful ruling at the Court of Appeals this week. It was quite sweeping. The court agreed that these types of automated firings had no sufficient human review.
Grounds you can't show you're working out, as it were, robo firing. These are, I think, Uber and Ola
cabs,
drivers and workers. But there's quite a big. What would the word be? There's quite a big kicker to this success.
There is. It's bittersweet, yes, because one of those Brexit freedom bills you love so much is coming up in Parliament later this month, the so-called Data Protection Digital Information Bill. And it's looking to strip away and water down exactly the protections, the rights that we were to claim in Amsterdam.
So this is legislation that looks at Uber drivers and thinks, God, they've got far too much protection under the law.
Yeah, indeed, and not just Uber drivers, everybody, though.
Yeah.
Everybody who might be subject to an automated decision on, its credit scoring, for a mortgage or goodness knows what. We're all subject to algorithmic decision making these days, whether we like it or not, and increasingly will be so. It just happens that Uber drivers, delivery riders, at the bleeding edge of this. But yeah, you're right. Theresa May promised us an employment bill when we first started the claim against Uber in 2015. We still haven't seen it. But they've been quick enough to to bring other bills forward that
bring
we
this
can,
one through.
the very few rights that we have.
Anything that people listening can do? I suspect not really, except perhaps alert their local MPs. But what difference that makes, I do not know.
Absolutely alert your local MP, because this bill needs to be amended and killed off, because there hasn't been enough media attention on it, because it was kind of technical. But the truth is that we'll be all screaming out for these rights in 2 years, 3 years' time, as work. We're all hybrid working. We're all surveilled in our hybrid roles these days, and the rights, when we need them, will be long gone. So it's very important to protect those rights now.
And there's a very, very good explanation of it on your website over at the Worker Information Exchange, which I recommend everybody to have a look at, because you're right, it always makes me think of Joni Mitchell. You don't know what you've got till it's gone. James Farrow, the General Secretary of the App Drivers and Couriers Union, reminding us of something else that will be a Brexit benefit for anyone who thinks that workers' protections are a bad thing. And of course, there are plenty of them around. I had to curtail that a little early because we've got a rather long lump's not quite the right word, is it? We've got a rather long chunk of this week's Full Disclosure. I'm really excited about this for two reasons. Number one, I just think he's a really cool dude. And number two, he doesn't do many interviews. And I was so flattered, really, when he agreed to do this one, that I then began to panic about messing it up or not living up to expectations. I'm fairly confident you will love it. You will love listening to Full Disclosure with Hugh Laurie almost as much as I loved doing it. If I'd met you when you were 13 and I'd said, what do you want to be when you grow up, what would you have said?
I suppose something heroic.
Yeah.
That might have involved either exploration or war or risk-taking of some kind.
Did you have heroes?
Yeah, they were the usual. I mean, Biggles, obviously.
Of course. Yeah.
Who doesn't?
And the people who'd come to school with their lectures. Did you have that? The fellow who'd been up the Zambezi.
Yes, there was a bit of that.
They were
fantastic.
I don't know where they got the careers advisor could get you on that path. What do you want to do when you grow up?
Yeah. What do you want to do when you grow up? Well, first of all, I'd like to have been born 100 years ago. That's the first thing. The sort of Shackleton heroics were, I suppose were in my mind. But then, I don't think the careers officer actually had a leaflet for that when I was there. No.
And was there room for anything else apart from rowing? Because I know by the time that you were at university, you're looking at it's 8 hours a day or thereabouts.
It's a lot, yeah.
But you got into it pretty heavily at school. Was there room? Did you still do the acting? Did you still do other stuff on the?
Not much.
What's that like then? Because I'm not single-minded. I've never had that single-mindedness. How do you get into it? Because you must care. You give an impression of falling into it or following your dad into it, but there must have been a pretty superhuman level of dedication involved.
It's pretty addictive, I must say.
And that's endorphins as much as anything else,
I suppose it is endorphins, but there's something about not just the physical demands of it. There's something about winning a rowing race that is unlike winning anything else not that I've won a lot of other things, but the few things that I have didn't come close to the feeling you get from winning a rowing race. I'm not quite sure. I mean, I had a theory at one time that it's because you're facing backwards. So you're watching the person you're beating, whereas runners leading an Olympic race, for example, they always have that they look like slightly neurotic horses coming up the last, the home straight. They've got, who's coming past me? Who's coming past me?
Can't look over.
Where is it? Exactly.
Because then I'll slow down.
Exactly. And their eyes go wide and they look absolutely terrified. Whereas you kind of know when you've got a rowing race in the bag. You sort of know when you've broken them, actually, to be sort of brutal about it. That's what it amounts to. You kind of think, I've actually...
That makes sense.
I've made you give up. I've made the other crew give up, which is quite a good feeling.
What was it like to lose?
that's less pleasant.
But also you can't see the winner, so it must
you cannot. You can hear them, though. You can bloody hear them. That's the awful thing.
And cheering.
But as my dad coached me. Not very often, but he did for a couple of weeks. I remember there was a race we lost, and we were very despondent about it. And I remember him saying, "Always remember, any idiot can win." And he wasn't much given to these sort of gnomic pronouncements, but that was a particularly good one, I thought. What he meant was that winning doesn't really teach you anything. You can go through, if you're a constant winner, you go through life without ever really being touched by anything, without ever learning anything or reconfiguring yourself. Whereas if you lose, it forces you to examine yourself and think about what you could have done better and how hard you're prepared to exert yourself to make sure it doesn't happen again. He's
right, isn't he?
He is. He was and he is, yeah.
It's just coming up to 11:58. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Hugh Laurie on Full Disclosure. Every week I say it's one of my all-time favourites, but it is. I'm turning into that Paul Whitehouse character. I say, it's brilliant, everything's brilliant. But it is, and I've done 2 more now that are coming up in the next couple of weeks that I'm also just utterly delighted with. It's not a coincidence. We put quite a lot of effort into deciding who we want to talk to. And also, obviously, that then has to be married to the question of who is available, but or indeed prepared to talk to us. But that one was a real treat. And the reason why Hugh is around is because his new Agatha Christie adaptation, Why Didn't They Ask Evans, airs on ITV at 9 o'clock on Easter Sunday. It's classic family viewing stuff, and it runs across all 3 nights, Sunday, Monday and Tuesday. It'll also be streaming on ITVX following transmission of the first episode on ITV1, and it's absolutely lovely. It's a real kind of old school adaptation of a non-Poirot or Marple Agatha Christie, and we talk about it quite a lot in the podcast. So if you're a big Christie person or even just a big crime fiction person, there's loads there for you as well. And we talk a bit about House and going to Hollywood and the life-changing nature of that. And if you didn't know about the rowing stuff, he was in the boat race. And he would have been, he was certainly an Olympic standard rower until he got a bout of glandular fever. And when he got glandular fever, he couldn't do the rowing. So he started looking around at Cambridge University for other things to do, wanders into the Drama Society, bumps into Emma Thompson. And the rest is history. Next year, Stephen Fry turns up. It's just a lovely, 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 lovely stuff. Thanks to Kaylee in Blackpool. I'm going to do this whether I need to or not, just to be on the safe side. Belt and braces. The other people, the full list of persons nominated for the Waterloo Ward in the election of councillors for Blackpool Council is as follows. Luke Bodenham is standing for Labour, as is Simon Cartmel. Chris Higgett and Diane Mitchell are the Conservative Party candidates. Jim O'Neill is an independent. Derek Robertson is standing for Reform UK. And Tina Rothery is standing for the Green Party. And that concludes this part of the programme. It is Thursday, even though it doesn't feel like it necessarily, which means that it is also 12 o'clock. And that means that it is now time for Mystery Hour, your weekly opportunity to achieve the sort of satisfaction not ordinarily available anywhere else on your radio dial. Ring in with your questions, and when you've heard the questions, ring in with your answers.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. Mystery Hour with James O'Brien.
4 minutes after 12 is the time, and now we're here, your weekly opportunity to achieve sort of satisfaction not ordinarily available anywhere else on your radio dial. I don't have a great deal to add this week, actually. There's a prize, isn't there? There's a wonderful Mystery Hour board game for my favourite contributor. That's all you have to do. You just have to be my favourite contributor. Well, that's not quite true. You have to provide my favourite contribution. And if it were possible for 20 people who I've spoken to before to ring in, I couldn't pick a favourite just based on history. My favourite contribution of the day will win a Mystery Hour board game. Full terms and conditions at lbc.co.uk. And speaking of websites, if you want to buy your own Mystery Hour board game, then you can go to mysteryhour.co.uk. It's a brilliant game. I can say that because I had nothing to do with its actual conception. It's just my face on the box. But you don't have to. You can turn the box upside down while you're playing, can't you? You could use it as a sort of receptacle, put your sandwiches in it. Or you could just put some stickers over it or something like that. Anything like that. Or you could draw a funny moustache on it and some spectacles like Groucho Marx. So much you could do, really. You still get change out of 20 quid. Should we just start then? Just go on with it? I think no repetition. That's my job, really. It's fallen apart recently. Because I've had so many colleagues over the years now that it's almost impossible to keep track of. Who can remember whether or not something's ever come up before? If it's come up in the last couple of weeks, I've got a 52-48 chance of remembering. The rest of it's it's all over, really. The days of having total recall are long behind me, but I'll do my best. Don't be boring. I know that's in the ear of the beholder. It's also arguably a bit pot kettle, but motoring questions generally don't. I mean, even that's the great thing about rules, isn't it? The sound they make when you break them. I don't even know that some of the questions that have been motoring adjacent in recent weeks have been quite fun. Can't go back over all the greatest hits. Don't say basically. Let's just start, shall we? Seriously, James is in Inverness. James, question or answer?
It's a question, James, and first-time caller. Thanks for taking the call. So I have been lucky enough to have 2 weeks leave from work.
Yes.
I have a desk-based job, a pretty executive-based job, and I find that very regularly in getting the work done to get on holiday and hand over and make sure everything's done. On the first few days, and again it happened this time for about 5 days a week, you get really ill. You go on leave and you get really ill.
It's such a cruel blow, isn't it? It's like you're like a little kid running to the school gates, and then hey, we break up, we break down, we don't care at school. Feels like you trip over your shoelaces and you're laid up in bed for 2 or 3 days. It's terrible.
Exactly. So the question is there a medical reason for that? Does the system know that you're no longer running on adrenaline, you're no longer having to get everything done, and it kind of goes, right, okay, I'm taking you down now. But is there a medical reason for that? It seems to be that when I speak to friends and colleagues that work in the same type of work, less so manual work, because they tend to finish and they tend to do their job, and they tend to, friends that work in manual work, they kind of tend to work their hours and then finish, and then they go back and they do their hours, etc. But those that are kind of desk-based, where they are working long
When
hours,
you relax, it lets the bad in.
Lets it go. So is there a medical reason for that? Is there any reason?
I like it. It's a great question,
happens?
Actually. I like it a lot. And I look forward to it. Hopefully someone can provide us with an answer. I look forward to hearing it. I think I've got better over the years, but then my job's not exactly. It's taxing between 10 and 1, or between 8 and 1, but once it's finished, it's not that bad. 8 minutes, but I used to suffer from that terror. It used to drive me nuts. I used to get tonsillitis as soon as it was like really bad. I had to have an injection in my bum once. I love the idea of someone who's just turned on the radio, like just that moment right there. And they go, pardon, what? I thought I'm here for the news. I'm here for some scintillating current affairs commentary. What's going on? Who is this person? And why is he talking about his bum? Chris is in Leeds. Chris, question or answer?
Good afternoon, James. Love the show. My question is, James, when people were digging for coal or iron ore or whatever, anything you like, it doesn't matter, does it?
Yeah.
How on earth did they know that what they were looking for was there?
Rivers.
Honestly.
No.
This has been puzzling me for years.
Well,
I've actually been down as a visitor to a coal mine, and it occurred to me then, I thought, well, how on earth?
As a physicist? A physicist in a coal mine?
As a visitor years ago, James, I went down as a
visitor. I thought you said I thought you said a physicist. A physicist in a coal mine. I thought you should bloody know. You should know. Why are you asking me? A visitor? What? Just like a tourist on a tourist trip?
I was a visitor. We helped. I was instrumental in helping the miners during the miners' strike. It's a long time ago.
Oh, fantastic!
As a thank you, we got a visit down a coal mine.
Oh, that's nice. Where was it? Which coal mine was it?
That was a place. People in West Yorkshire will know it. I think it's near Castleford, and it's a place called Ledston Luck.
Right, you are.
And it's been closed for donkeys.
I've always been fascinated by the underground. I'd love to have done that. I went down a tin mine in Cornwall. Well, I think the answer would be that some of it makes its way to the surface, and that's when you start digging.
Could be, couldn't it?
Especially with diamonds. You find a diamond somewhere, what are you going to do? You're going to get your spade.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then rivers. If there's gold coming down a river, you'd probably go back to the hill that the river was started, and then you dig into that hill, go in from the side, like in Tom Sawyer.
Possibly so. But when you consider the expense and the manpower involved in digging, I think less than luck was only a matter of about 150 feet, so it was quite shallow, really. But
yeah.
Some of these mines are absolutely incredibly deep, aren't they?
Yeah, but they weren't deep to start with, Chris.
No,
of course. So they'd have found coal and then carried on digging.
Because they're looking for the seam, aren't they? Obviously,
yes, but there's loads. There's more than one. There's lots of seams, I think. So you've got a seam here, and then you think, well, we'll have another dig, see if we hit another one, and if you dig too far, they give up on it.
It could well be the answer, couldn't it?
It could be. It's a great question. I mean, it's such a great question, actually.
There'll be somebody out there that's got a very good knowledge on this thing, I'm sure.
Why would you start digging? Why would you start digging? What would be? Because you're not just going to do it randomly, or maybe you do. What about with oil? Do you just start drilling and then see?
Are you going to do it? I mean, if you're going back 200 years, would you start digging all that distance if you thought there was only going to be sufficient for?
No, this is the bit where I think you've got the right. I don't think they dig and dig and dig and dig. I think the only deep mines are the ones where they got lucky early, but they've now dug it all out. We shall find out. We shall find out. I like it.
Thanks very much indeed,
No,
James.
thank you very much. I shall do my level best. That's very kind of you to say so. 11 minutes after 12 is the time. Ernest is in Croydon. Ernest, question or answer?
Question, please.
Carry on.
So my question is to do with handwriting. When you look at handwriting, it seems that those in the past have better handwriting than us right now. Just looking at going to school, or when I was at school, you had to, in primary school especially, you had to write with pencil before you could use pen. So you had to prove your handwriting was good. But now...
Still do, or at least you did 10 years ago.
Yeah, but nowadays, my question is basically, why is handwriting getting worse?
Oh, use your noodle, man. Come on.
I know typing, typing, but is there any other reason? Cause,
I think in the Victorian time, everybody wrote the same. I tell you who's got beautiful handwriting. Are you interested in this?
Yeah, go on.
Absolutely beautiful writer is Michael Whitehall. Off the telly, Jack's dad.
Yeah.
I got a lovely note off him the other day. His handwriting is absolutely beautiful. And oddly enough, we went to the same school, although clearly not at the same time. And I suspect that everybody who was at that school at that time would probably have very similar handwriting. In my very, very earliest days of prep school, I think they were still almost trying to teach us all the same handwriting style. And it just must have been the end of that era, because I don't remember it kicking off into the second year, possibly not even the second term. So the Victorian practice of uniformity, all children who were lucky enough to go to school would have been encouraged to write copperplate, I think is one example of it. And it was very much a mark of, moral rectitude, tidy hand, where they're tidy-minded, all of that kind of strict, uniform, very rigorous discipline and stuff. So that would be the bedrock of tidy handwriting, and that would have stayed even as it became less formal and less enforced over the decades and then into the 20th century. And then probably by the time you hit the 60s and then the 70s, everyone's chilling a bit, relaxing, and then along come keyboards, not so much typewriters as computers and smartphones, and you just don't do it anymore. You just really, very, very, very rarely use longhand, which would be the final sort of nail in the coffin of general tidy handwriting.
Okay, fair enough.
I'm taking that. I'm going definitive on that one.
Okay.
Qualifications, best-selling author.
Great.
Thank you, Ernest. 12:04, coming out to 15:15. Squeeze in Sean, who's in Bletchingley in Surrey. Sean, question or answer?
It's a question, please, James.
Carry on.
Why do I take my reading glasses off to hear better on the phone? Also, I close my eyes when somebody passes me a spoon.
Pull back the curtain.
Has this got the right amount of seasoning?
Yes.
So my question is, it's sort of two
Well, you've
parts.
kind of answered it, I think.
Well, it is. The question was, James, do our senses work better individually rather than in collaboration?
If I
the second part is, or am I just odd?
No, you're not odd, because a lot of people listening will recognise this. It may even reach to the sticking your tongue out a bit when you're threading a needle, but it may not. So we'll leave that out of the equation. The idea that if you shut down one sense, does it enhance the other? Seems quite plausible. Seems quite plausible to me, but we shall find out.
Oh, brilliant. Okay.
We'll do our level best. Thank you very much indeed. I did taking your reading glasses off so that you can hear better on the phone and closing your eyes when you taste something. I like it. It is 12:15, so we've got the senses in isolation. I can't imagine there's going to be any form of steward's inquiry on the handwriting question. That was a beautiful answer, I felt, from me. How do you know where to dig a mine? Are there any indications, or is it just dumb luck? It seems unlikely. And is there a medical reason for the phenomenon of people getting a little bit poorly on the first few days of their holiday? 12:15 is the time.
Mystery Hour on LBC with James O'Brien.
It is 18 minutes after 12. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where Mystery Hour is well underway. I'll remind you of questions that need answering shortly, but I don't need to now. Louise is in Chippenham. Louise, question or answer?
It's an answer, James. Good morning.
Good morning to you.
It's an answer to the coal question.
Oh, marvellous.
Right. Now, have you heard of something called the Order of the Strata?
Yes.
Okay, so that was put together by William Smith, as you sound like you know.
I wouldn't have been able to name William Smith, but I have memories of this from geography lessons.
Yeah, the map that changed the world is a production of his. And he recognised that there is a set order that the sedimentary rocks were laid down. So you might have a typical sequence of a shale and then a sandstone and then perhaps a bit of a mudstone above that, and then you might get a coal, right? And then above that you might get another mudstone and so on. And you can fix these in time using the included fossils. So you know where you are in time, and then you can figure out where you are in space. So it's a great predictive tool. So if you know the geology of a particular region, you can pretty much guarantee where you're going to find the coal. And just to make sure, of course, you put down some test drilling, and you get the core up and the.
But where would you get? Where would the first thing come from? Before the test drilling? Why would you think it's a better idea to have a test drill there than there, for example?
Well, you go out and do some mapping, and you see where the rocks might be folded or where they're flat. So you can follow these sort of layers as they go up and down, and you site your test drilling rigs accordingly.
So there's never anything. I mean, it's not like a bit of diamond appears on the surface, and you think, "Oh, we're going to dig here then."
No, not really like that at all.
Thank you for dismissing me so politely. Thank you for not saying "you stupid boy" at that point.
I thought, oh, God, I've got to answer this.
Yes.
Then I had to rush and put my teeth in before I called you.
Well, thank you. I'm honoured, Louise.
And then I've been thinking how on earth I can explain this, because it's not necessarily intuitive. But I did used to be a coal exploration geologist, and I also used to be an underground geologist.
Well, I bet there can't have been many women doing that as a job. I can't imagine.
No, indeed not. I learned to get into the change house, completely shower and get into my day clothes in, I think, 8 minutes, because all the men were waiting outside to get in.
How did you get into it? What drew you to it, Louise, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, I always sort of liked rocks.
Yes.
And I went to King's to read geology, and graduated in 81. Then we emigrated over to Zimbabwe,
right?
And then worked there for a few years in an underground nickel mine,
Great.
And then we moved down to South Africa, and I got a job looking for coal.
How amazing. So you look at the topography, do you, slightly, and then get an idea of what the strata...
A lot of it's done from initial surface mapping.
Yes. And that ups the odds on you hitting coal if you go in there.
It's all about reducing the chances of failure as you go through these layers of investigation.
Sounds like it. Yes, exactly that. I'm going to give you the highest honour I can give you, Louise, because your qualifications for answering this question are so impressive. So this is no. This is. I don't know how far. If you make sure you definitely got your teeth in.
I have. Yes, they're wobbling a bit now in anticipation.
Let them wobble.
I'm Ray Liotta, and you're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. If you build it, they will come.
Oh, James, you're a little pocket of sanity in this crazy, mad, sad world.
I hope so.
Thank you and Sheila. Thank you both for what you do.
Oh, well, what a lovely thing to say. I shall make sure Sheila is made aware of your kind words as well. And you well, thank you. What an amazing, what an amazing story you must have to tell. What an amazing career and life. Thank you, Louise. And we can cross that one off the list. Hey, Chris, mate, that was a cracking question, wasn't it? The quality of the answer, absolutely knocking it out of the park. Christine is in Norwich. Christine, question or answer?
In question.
Hello.
Who decides at what age? I know the younger people is not the thing but at what age does the bank decide that vulnerable persons should be put on the account? This has happened to me, and for the last 3 months, I've had difficulty in accessing various things without being sort of things terminated. So I wasn't told. I am 90, but I'm quite... my marbles are still here.
Clearly.
And I wondered why, is there some rule that they have to put that, or it seems to me that they're keeping an eye on things a bit too much.
What a brilliant question.
Well, I was cross.
I bet you were. I would be as well.
Yes, but
who are you calling? Did you say, who are you calling vulnerable, mush?
Well, yes, but perhaps I am. I won't have as much knowledge of the internet, but I do manage.
That might be it. I wonder whether it's got the likelihood of you being the victim of a scam, for example.
No, I don't know, because
I don't either.
It started in February when I tried to buy something online, and the next thing that pinged on was authentication.
Oh, well, I have to do that as well.
Yes, I know.
Sorry.
And I attempted to do it, but without results, so I have a card reader.
Yes.
And I just wonder, who says, right, we'll put that on her account? I mean, they may be doing it with the best of intentions.
I'm sure they are, but they should probably have spoken to you about it first.
Well, they didn't.
Well,
and
no.
it took me, I had to go to the bank to find out, because the call centre are not allowed to give you that sort of
What did the bank
information.
say? What did the bank say?
Well, the girl looked on my account, and she said, So she said, well, I'll show you. And she did. And I said, well, I didn't know that. And that accounts for everything that's been going on for the last 3 months.
Yes.
But they didn't tell me. I would have accepted it if they'd have asked me.
I hear this.
Who decides?
Did you ask her? Or was it above her pay grade? Did you ask her?
I think so. It was above her pay grade.
So someone somewhere has decided to stick this thing on your account, and that means you have...
Well, they do this because they started this get the app every time you rang up, you see.
Yes.
I check on the telephone. This is what does it.
So you didn't
get the
app.
They don't want you on the telephone. They want you on the internet, and I'm not keen on that.
No, I can fully understand. I hope someone will know the answer, Christine.
We'll try, shall we?
Well, why not? We've got nothing to
so
lose.
The old lady needn't be quite so enraged.
Well, you're not. Listen, I can't. You're definitely not silly.
I know that.
No, but you are old. I can't. There's not a lot I can do about that.
What a terrible thing!
You just told me you were 90. You just told me you were 90. I'm old enough at 51. I can challenge silly, but I can't really challenge old, can I? I shall do.
I don't mind. I'm not. I don't mind how old I am, but I'd rather know what I'm being labelled.
I could not agree more. I shall find out for. Well, I shall endeavour to find out for you. Ideally, from what we need is someone who's in the business of sticking these vulnerables on people, isn't it?
Well, they do rather do their own thing, don't they, banks?
I think so, yeah, they certainly do. Law unto themselves. Leave it with me, Christine.
Thank you. Bye.
Oh, thank you. Take care. 27 minutes after 12 is the time. Who did? That's a great question, isn't it? Who decides? How and why? Because that has happened clearly to Christine's surprise. Mark's in Farnham. Mark, question or answer?
I've got a question.
Carry on.
Hello. So my lovely wife Lorraine bought me at Christmas a little trip around Yorkshire for a week, just driving around the Dales. I've never really been up there. And
delightful.
We noticed, it was gorgeous, absolutely fantastic. And it was
Which bits? Where did you stay? What sort of places did you stay at?
We were in Haworth, where the Brontes came from.
Yeah, absolutely. Right up on the moors.
So you draw a big circle around there, and we basically went in all directions. And
how delightful.
Just absolutely stunning place.
Yes.
Lots of lovely pub lunches, pies, you name it. I put on 3 stone in the process, but there we go. Now, I think, this is topical, because we've got Easter coming up, and I'm going to talk about sheep and lambs.
Excellent.
In the area, there are, as you know, loads and loads of old ancient stone walls hemming in fields for livestock to be controlled.
Yes.
And these things are hundreds of years old, mostly.
Dry stone walls.
And a lot of them, particularly ones with sheep in them, have been extended in height by wire deer fencing, essentially, by maybe another 2 foot. Yeah, they lay stakes at a diagonal along the wall, and then they stick deer fencing up on top of it to raise the level. So what have we got? Are we now evolved into Olympic standard high jumping?
Have the sheep got higher, or have the walls got smaller?
Well, exactly. Well, I don't think the walls have got smaller because there's too many of them. Everywhere you go, they've got the same fencing.
Yes, but they'd probably, historically, dry stone walls would be a bit like painting the Forth Bridge. They'd be in a constant state of repair and restoration.
No doubt. However, if that's the case, where have all those stones gone that have fallen down over the years? Because they're not there. And indeed, newer walls are built higher. So,
no, that's a great question. I mean, it's not. I mean, it seems
have the sheep's breed changed and they can jump
Probably.
high? Have those walls collapsed and the stones been taken away to make other walls? I don't know. It just seems really odd that these walls that worked for centuries and centuries. I don't know how long we've been doing sheep in Yorkshire, but for all that time they were high enough, and now
they're not. I like it. It's a great question. Very observant of you as well. So, why have the walls on sheep farms in Yorkshire got higher?
Essentially, yes.
0345 6060 973. Thank you, Mark. Amelia Cox is here with your headlines.
Mystery Hour on LBC with James O'Brien. Call 0345 6060 973.
It's 12:34. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Why have the walls surrounding flocks of sheep in Yorkshire got higher, particularly with the augmentation of metal poles on top of the dry stone dikes, I think technically. Thank you to whoever reminded me of that on Twitter. If it's got mortar, it's a wall. If it's got... Well, we always said dry stone walls when I was a kid, and I went to school up there, so we used to know a little bit about them. Why do our senses improve when we shut down another one? So when you close your eyes to taste something, or you take your glasses, or turn the radio off when you're parking the car, that kind of thing. Does that work? Be sure to listen back on Global Player if you do turn your radio off while you're parking the car, and then you leave it off when you get out. Don't forget you can listen to all LBC's radio shows on Global Player, where you can rewind. I'm only doing this because Sheila just walked past the window and I'm being teacher's pet. You can listen to all LBC's radio shows on Global Player. So if you do turn it off when you're parking the car because it enhances your other senses when your ears are not being bothered, then be aware of that. We've done the mining. Beautiful answer on the mining question. I went, I think, all in on the handwriting question. And is there a medical reason for why we get poorly early on in our holidays? Tom's in Ongar. Tom, question or answer?
Question, please.
Carry on.
So, when you go to a petrol station, and you could be filling up...
What?
I've got an out. You might be filling up a lawnmower.
Is that still technically motoring? I don't think it is. Carry on. You're over the line. Oh, outrageous.
Just about. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so, like you might top up to, say, 20 quid, and you might aim for it and slightly miss.
Yeah.
If you add in, say, 5p extra, is there any point? Are you actually getting that much? How accurate is it? Because if you turn the nozzle upside down, a little bit will drip out.
Yeah.
So is there any points, really, other than just making yourself a little bit happier?
I don't quite follow. So is there any point in hitting the mark dead on?
Well, yeah. So, are you getting 3p's extra worth?
So you mean what you mean is the measurement accurate enough for threepence worth of petrol to be measurable?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and how much is it reasonably? You know, you might the 10p mark might be feasible, but is the 1p mark really going to be making a 1p exactly 1p's worth of difference? Because as you say, there's always a little bit left on the nozzle.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's an odd one, that, Tom, but I get it. I mean, because there's an odd sort of zen-like state you reach when you fill the car, isn't there? I'm not a big motorist, as you probably know, but I do fill the car more often than I drive it, actually, before going in to buy Jaffa cakes for everybody and then getting back into the passenger seat. But it is quite zen-like, and then you get that sort of weird period of concept, especially these days when you spend a lot of time going, how much? What? There's been some mistake. This is outrageous. Is there a hole in the tank? Where is it all going? I've never seen these figures before in a petrol station forecourt. But it does that, yeah. Okay, so how accurate is the thingy on the thingy?
Yes, please.
There, you're on. There you go. So a culmination of thingies. How accurate is the thingy on the thingy in the petrol station thingy? Barbara is in Melcham in Wiltshire. Barbara, question or answer?
Good afternoon, James.
Hello,
it's
Barbara.
a question.
Carry on.
I've got 2 large pine cones in the garden which aren't attached to a tree.
Right.
I've had them probably for about 3 or 4 years now, maybe a bit longer.
Well, ornamental pine cones, Barbara?
Well, no, I picked them off a tree.
Yeah.
So they're stuck out in the garden, but they're not the little ones, they're the big giant ones.
Yeah, so they're ornamental.
Oh, okay, they're ornamental.
Yeah.
Anyway, when it rains, they close up.
Yeah.
When it's sunshine, they open up.
Yeah.
And I want to know why and how. Because they're dead. They're not on the tree anymore.
Yeah, but it's the shape of the wood, isn't it?
Is it?
Yeah, so the way the water softens the wood a bit, so it expands, and as it expands, the pine cone opens, and then as it dries, the pine cone closes again.
There. Well, there you go.
That's physics, that is.
They're a better forecast than the weatherman.
What do they start opening before it actually rains? Just when the air is is moist, when there's moisture in the air.
When there's moisture in the air. Yeah.
That's
so
fascinating.
I know when it's going to rain, and I know when it's going to sunshine.
You trust by your coat. They'd have burnt you as a witch in the olden days, wouldn't they? With your pine cones. Conology. Barbara's invented conology. Pine conology. I love it. But listen, I'm going to leave it on the board. I'm going to give myself a round of applause because I'm greedy like that. But I'm going to thank you. But I'm also going to leave it on the board just in case it's not what I said. It must be, though. I can't think what else it would be.
Okay.
Thank you, Barbara. Take care. Keep an eye on your cones. Lee's in Enfield. Lee, question or answer?
It is an answer.
Carry on, Lee.
Sorry, I'm very excited. This is the first time after 6 years that I've decided to call you.
Well, fantastic. I'm excited now too. After that tribute, carry on.
It is the question to why the good lady with all her marbles gets questioned at the bank.
Yes.
So effectively,
Lovely
it is
Christine.
Just one of the protected characteristics that the FCA deems as potentially vulnerable.
What is?
Her age.
Just her age. So when I should have asked when her birthday was, shouldn't I? Because but she was 90, mate. I mean, surely it would have kicked in earlier.
Absolutely. So
it's not that then.
Characteristics, it covers a multitude of sins. So effectively, someone who is maybe 18 and beginning their financial life could be vulnerable, and anyone over the age of 75 may be deemed vulnerable, and after 85, additional measures kick in.
Vulnerable to what, Lee? Lee Enfield. I've just noticed Lee Enfield like the rifle.
Lee Enfield like the rifle.
You're not familiar with it? Lee Enfield is a famous...
I'm not.
Have you never watched any westerns?
I've watched westerns, but generally
it's like the most famous rifle ever, the Lee Enfield rifle, the bolt-action rifle. There's a British Army used it until about 1950, the mid-1950s. Lee Enfield. We used it in CCF, in cadet force. I mean, I know that's not your name. You're Lee and you're in Enfield, so it's not that exciting. But I just noticed it on the screen. It was a felicitous juxtaposition of words, Lee. Anyway, I've distracted you now. What are you vulnerable to? What is the fine?
I think that you gave people a free mystery hour answer.
I did. I did actually. Yeah. So vulnerable to what, for example?
So, effectively, people of a certain age, or generation, they may have been used to people who maybe knocked on their door and said, look, I can either do your windows or I can fix your gutters. And they would have been completely used to that. And they would say, yeah, absolutely, I'd go ahead. And then they may go to their bank and try and withdraw a large amount of cash for paying. So effectively, it's just putting in place a safeguard to ensure that people who...
Without telling them?
Well, this is the thing. So I caught the tail end of the call from Christine, that the girl in the bank didn't really understand what it was in place for.
Yes.
So they can advise the customer why it's in place. However, I'd probably understand that they might be a little remiss in case it seems a bit ageist.
Yeah, it could be offensive. I think Christine didn't mind the actual designation. She just didn't really appreciate the absence of explanation.
Yeah, absolutely.
And she doesn't have the app. She doesn't like internet banking. That presumably would add a layer of vulnerability to her position, would it?
Well, at that point, it certainly gets harder because you're effectively pushing certain individuals out of how they choose to bank. If people decide they want to come down the bank, but even online, there are certain measures in place that you can only maybe send a certain amount through each day as a fast payment.
Yeah. So they should probably have told her.
Yeah.
But it's nothing for her to worry about.
No, absolutely.
Quite the opposite, in fact.
If Christine can go down to the bank and say, I absolutely understand what it is I'm doing with my account and why I'm doing it, there should be absolutely no safeguard. But
why do you think it might have dropped then in February of all time? I mean, what might it have been that kicked it off? They established that she wasn't going to download the app, or I mean, why? I think that was what also mystified her. It was the suddenness of the designation.
It may well have been the fact of her particular transaction. So, for example, if someone's just going into their, a local store and using their bank as they normally would, then nothing would trigger.
Okay.
But if, for example, there was, say, a larger amount that was either being transferred to a new payee, or she was trying to draw money out of her bank account in cash.
Yeah.
Which again falls somewhat into the generational element, then it would be that triggered it.
Okay. Qualifications?
I am a financial advisor.
Well done. I like that. Good answer.
There you go.
Oh, great work, Lee. Great work. I'm thinking of the Winchester for the Cowboys, the Lee Enfield for the Army. I did correct that, actually, Keith. Not that Keith, a different Keith. They weren't in Westerns. They were Winchesters. Right. Ian in Manchester as well.
I've got a Stetson that my wife hates, so I'll don that in your honour.
You can't wear a Stetson, mate, in Enfield. You can't walk around Enfield in a Stetson. Can you?
Can you?
I don't know.
Sorry, I was born in Boreham Wood. I'll walk around there.
Oh, that's fine then. It's 12:44 and Mike's in Waltham Abbey. Mike, question or answer?
It's a question, James, please.
Carry on.
What happens to a person's assets if they're sentenced to a long-term imprisonment?
What have you done, Mike?
Nothing yet.
Nothing yet. What are you planning?
That's between me and the wife.
Carry. Meaning, when you say assets, what do you mean?
Well, you might have a £5 million house and all the bits and pieces the trimmings that go with it.
And there's no one else to look after it.
It may not be the proceeds of crime.
It's still yours. So, you just have to make arrangements for someone to look after it, wouldn't you? Or put it in the hands of a letting agency, or it goes to rack and ruin.
Well, you still have bills to pay. You still have council tax and the like.
Yeah, it's a nice question, that. I shall find out for you. Who sort of runs your affairs? How are the assets controlled? If you go to prison and you have no kind of family or no next of kin or whatever the word is, what do you give people? What's that name when you give people something when they're old? Rights of attorney. Power of attorney. There we go. Thank you, Mike. Don't do it, mate. It's not worth it. It's not worth the bird.
Mystery Hour with James O'Brien. This is LBC.
12:49 is the time. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Let's just crack on, shall we? Cheryl's in Fraserburgh in Aberdeenshire. Cheryl, question or answer?
Hello.
Hello.
An answer, please.
Yes.
Okay, about the stone walls.
Oh, great. Yes, go on.
Sheep.
Are you a sheep farmer?
I am.
Carry on.
These days I don't keep them for meat, though. I keep them for their fleece.
Yes, fair enough.
Yes, I am. the ground over time builds up with, muck and grasses and things
Yeah,
like that.
of course it does. That's what I meant by the walls getting smaller.
Yes, but also these days, the sheep are actually bred bigger
Yeah.
and more muscular.
So they can hop
the
over
meat.
those. So, I mean, literally, that's it. Spring lambs, would that make a difference? Would it be seasonal? Is a spring lamb more likely to clear a wall than an old wall sheep?
No. An upland, a hill sheep is far more likely to get over a wall, to be honest.
So the walls get smaller as a consequence of the ground rising, which happens, obviously, and the sheep get friskier as a consequence of selective breeding.
Yeah.
And therefore, a good old-fashioned dry stone wall it'd be a lot cheaper for you to put a metal fence on top of a dry stone wall than to get the dry stone. If you can find a dry stone wall builder to come around and do it, it'll take months.
Absolutely.
Love it.
Yep.
I love that.
That's it. Simple.
That's a beautiful answer, and qualifications we already know. You're a sheep farmer. A round of applause for Cheryl, please.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much. And I hope Mark was pleased with that question, because it was a really neat question and answer. Very tight. I like that. Wayne's in York. Wayne, question or answer?
It's an answer of sorts, James.
Go on then, Wayne.
Right. There's been a bit of a North Yorkshire theme going on here today.
There is, isn't there?
Yeah, I'm going to Ampleforth on Thursday.
Well, don't make sure you keep your hands in your pockets.
Right. So basically, it's regards to the heightened senses question.
Yes.
I am, unfortunately, for the past about 18 months, I'm gradually going blind.
Oh, I'm sorry, mate.
And, don't apologise. The kids love it because they're getting a guide dog. So...
Oh, you've heard it all. Go on.
Yeah, so this is all because I could go on forever about the tricks they play on me. It's fantastic.
Oh, well, I love that you're so upbeat about it. Go on. What? Talk to me about this. Is going to be the senses, then, isn't it?
It is. So this is a clinical study of one, and that one person is me. And my hearing has heightened, I would say, somewhere between 25 and 50% since I started losing my vision. It's on because I've got something called optic neuropathy,
right?
Which means that my eyes aren't talking to my brain properly and not sending the right messages through. And I think it must be something to do. I wish I was in biology, because it must be something to do with the remapping.
Parts of your brain possibly recalibrating or something like that. But and how do you measure that then? What would you, if I said to you, go on, what are you on about? You'd say, no, seriously, this happens.
Yeah, how could I quantify it?
Yeah, that's the word I was looking for. Thank you.
First and foremost, I've got two small children, and I wish I was going deaf rather than blind.
Yeah, okay, so, and the telly probably as well, the volume on the telly as well, if you're listening.
The volume on the telly's halfway down now.
That's fascinating.
Halfway from what it was.
Yeah, that'll do. That qualifications you've already told us. A round of applause. Why are you going to Ampleforth on Thursday? What's happening at Ampleforth on Thursday?
We're just meeting up with my sister because it's such a beautiful place to go. She lives in Knaresborough. I live in Thirsk.
Right.
So it's like almost somewhere in the middle.
Nice one.
But don't give me a round of applause. I don't need one of them.
Oh, God, of course I'm going to give you a round of applause, but I'll make sure the volume... Keith, turn it down a bit as well. I don't want to give him a scare. I'd go to... Well, are you going to Helmsley, or are you actually going to Ampleforth?
We're actually going to Ampleforth.
Oh, you what, to have a look around the grounds of the school and stuff, or just to sit in the village and have lunch?
Just to go and have... My mum's got something about Ampleforth that she's really...
Right.
She really wants to go there, so we're all meeting up over there.
I was about to recommend places to go, and then I remembered, the last time I was there was to get expelled 33 years ago. So I don't think my recommendations, my recommendations for a pint of Sam Smith's are probably not worth the paper they're printed on, Wayne. But anyway, here's your low volume round of applause. Sounds the same to me, that, Wayne. I don't know about you. I think Keith's yanking our chain. You take care, mate. All right.
Cheers, buddy. Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. John's in Chelmsford. John, question or answer?
I've got an answer.
Carry on.
It's about the petrol pumps.
Oh, yes.
Petrol pumps are mechanical, so the meters are mechanical meters. They don't usually.
Yeah.
And so once they get past the first couple of litres, they run pretty smoothly after that. You'll see a sign on the petrol pump, you may not have noticed it even, minimum delivery 2 litres. And that's because up to the first 2 litres, the meter's sort of getting into its stride. But after that, it's evened up and it's running smoothly and you should be okay.
Pretty strong answer. Qualifications?
I'm a trading standards officer and inspector of weights and measures.
Oh, sweet as a nut, mate. Have a round of applause.
Thank you.
Oh, lovely work from John. It's a nice one, this, isn't it? It's a nice mystery. Some weeks Mystery Hour can be a bit surreal. Some weeks it seems to be an exercise in unintentional comedy, and other weeks it sort of ticks almost all the boxes. This, to me, has been really vintage, with fascinating answers and some silliness as well, and some really diverting information. Back to Yorkshire. Chris is there. Chris in Skipton, question or answer?
It's an answer about the dry stone walls, or an enhancement on the answer. It's actually round here, they put these long poles up with barbed wire on the top in the Haworth area.
Yes.
And it's for cattle, not for sheep. So cattle are nosy and they like to rub their necks on walls and put their head over the walls, and they pull it back and pull the top stones off. So you put a long pole with some barbed wire on the top.
And to be fair, the question...
Put them off rubbing.
Yeah, the question was specific to Haworth, but he also thought it was specific to sheep. So between the two of you, you've given the...
Haworth area is cattle. It's very much for cattle why they do it.
No, that's fine. Between the two of you, you've given the perfect answer then, haven't you? Because you've gone multi-location and multi-species. What are your qualifications, Chris?
I'm a cattle and sheep vet in the Skipton area.
That'll do nicely. Round of applause for Chris. Thank you, mate. So what have we got? We've got prison assets left. Done the petrol station, done the walls. And why did you get poorly at the beginning of your holiday? And it's we've still got a couple of minutes left. We might be able to squeeze it in. John's in Milton Keynes. John, question or answer?
Hi there, James. Very quickly, firstly, thank you very much for whatever you do. I mean,
whatever I do. So whatever I do, you're welcome.
Honestly, you're an amazing guy.
Oh, stop it.
I'm only here on holiday. I don't live in the UK permanently. After the beefing, I decided to leave.
Lucky you.
But an answer for you. Why do people get ill when they go abroad?
Yeah.
It's quite simple. It's not the water so much, it's the ice they drink. So you'll have a drink with ice in it, yes?
Yeah.
And what you're not used to in your own country is how it's treated.
Do you think so?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure that I've had this when I haven't gone abroad.
You may be a bottled water that wasn't so good. But what it is, it's literally how the water's treated. My qualifications, I've got a PhD in biochemistry and biochemical analysis. I used to work for Pfizer's.
But it's not going to affect everybody because it's about susceptibility and one member of the family gets poorly and other members don't.
No, that's right. And I can't say the right word, obviously, because you're on the radio, but it's like a shed load of something in the sea.
As well.
Yeah,
Okay.
It gives you that. That's what it is. It's simple as that.
There might be room for another answer, but I don't think it would replace yours. It would just augment it. But there it is. I like that a lot. So, of course, you get a bit poorly the first couple of days of your holiday because you're getting used to the new water. Round of applause.
That's it. And by the way, if I win your game,
yes,
I would like you to auction it for a charity.
Oh, you see, that's very kind of you. Luckily, I'm not going to have to veer into uncomfortable territory now because you're not allowed to win it because you live overseas. So that's a shame. Poor old charity. Thank you, John. Don't allow that kind of thing in future. We can't be doing that. Otherwise, you just be robbing people blind with your. Oh, man alive! I give quite a lot to charity, or not like I don't like to go on about it. Anyway, I'm going to give it to Christine. The geologist, the mining expert, because that was such a delightful call, I think. I really am. A lot of competition this week, though, I've got to be honest with you. Louise, not Christine, Louise. Oh, Lord, it's all going horribly wrong.
I think that was emotional blackmail, by the way.
I didn't think that was fair.
Yeah.
No.
I'm sure he didn't mean any harm, but...
No, of course, he's a lovely bloke,
How
clearly.
can you give it to anybody else if somebody says...
And also, we can't auction it for charity. You probably get less than it cost in the first place. It's got my bloody great face.
Didn't like to say.
It's got my bloody great face on the box. Who's going to go, oh, yeah, I'll have one of them. If you missed any of today's show, you can listen back on Catch Up on Global Player or on the Whole Show podcast. All LBC shows are there, as well as the world's biggest podcast. Full disclosure, out early this week. It's out today, because I'm not here tomorrow. Hugh Laurie in the house. Absolutely lovely man. And obviously hugely talented. Probably the most modest man I've ever met. So it's quite a meeting of opposites. As a anyway, have a listen. Download Global Player for free from your app store or head to globalplayer.com. Tom Sawbrick with you at 4. I'm not back until Tuesday. Time for Sheila Fogarty now. 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 Time for Sheila Fogarty